Happy Friday. It looks like the rains are gone and the heat is back, or is it just me? But it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Friday edition of the best breakfast show on the block. This is the AM show across the whole country and across all digital platforms. You're listening to me, Sweetie Abochi, and I do this with Benjamin Akakpo. Now, if you've been following us for a while, on Thursdays and Fridays, we host two gentlemen or two personalities for our news review segment. This morning, of course, we'll start with the news that matters to you, and then Nana Yao Sapong, who is a political assistant and to Alan Tremanting, and Remy Edmondson, the National Secretary of the PPP, will be joining us to get into the news review segment. And then Mufta Nabila will bring you Prime Take on AM Sports, the latest update in the world of sports. Today is Friday, and on Fridays, Benjamin Akakpo shares his blunt thoughts with you. Today, he's captioned it, SNIT, Sports, Leadership and Remittances, the key issues. He'll get into that right after AM Sports, and then we'll get into our big stories. So this morning, we have a couple of conversations on our table. We start off with the Ghana AIDS Commission, who are concerned about low condom use and growing HIV infections, as Ghana records 17,774 new infections and 12,480 related deaths. What are the triggers, and how do we stem the tide? We get into this issue later on this morning. Also, the risk of air pollution, established to be the second largest risk factor of death globally, and accounting for the death of some 700,000 children under the age of 5 around the world. What does this staggering statistic mean for Ghana, and what should be our approach to dealing with air pollution? That's on our table this morning, and so we'll delve into the issues and other conversations right here on the AM show. My name is Sweetie Abochi. I'm inviting you to join us with your comments and your thoughts. It's a Friday edition, so you know how we do it. It's going to be fun, intellectual, and of course, riveting. Start off with the news now. Thanks for staying with us. This is the AM News. Details now. Beginning with 6 Ghanaian nationals have tragically died in Mecca due to a severe heat wave sweeping through Saudi Arabia, raising the death toll among Ghanaian pilgrims to 8. Abdul Rahman Al-Hassan Gumba, spokesperson for the Hajj Board, confirmed the fatalities during an interview on City FM. The pilgrims staying in Medina as part of their religious journey faced extreme temperatures exceeding 41 degrees Celsius. In response to the intense heat, Saudi authorities mandated that all pilgrims stay within their tent during peak heat hours, that is between noon and 4 p.m. local time. Our condolences to the families of the bereaved. In other stories, it was a tense day yesterday as third accused in the ongoing ambulance trial, businessman Richard Jakpa, recounted how he declared war on the Attorney General for betraying him. He also disclosed that at one point in the case, he approached the Attorney General and suggested he be made a prosecution witness when the AG told him he could not file a process to terminate the case against him. He contended in open court that betrayal by Godfrey Yeboadame made him angry and pushed him to declare war against the Attorney General. On day 3 of his cross-examination by prosecution, Richard Jakpa says he refused Godfrey Dame's explanation that he is a collateral damage in the trial. Latif Idrisu was in court for us.
Richard Jakpa said he is angry at the Attorney General because the Attorney General had assured him that he will let him go at the no case submission stage of this particular trial, only for him, Godfrey Yeboadame, to disappoint him, and so he is angry at him. And according to Richard Jakpa, he declared war between himself and the Attorney General at the residence of his cousin, Unicolendi, when they met after the Attorney General had sort of disappointed him when it came to the no case submission stage, when he failed to back him. He declared war against the Attorney General and said that the Attorney General could go on and use all the legal brains that he had, but him, Richard Jakpa, would also go to his underworld powers, and then they will see who would survive on the street. He said the Attorney General, Godfrey Yeboadame, had told him, Richard Jakpa, that he, Richard Jakpa, is a collateral damage in the ongoing trial, and that he will be acquitted at the end of this ongoing case. And Richard Jakpa told him that he doesn't want to be a collateral damage because he is innocent and he's lost all his dealings. His international networks has been lost as a result, and that was when he declared war on the Attorney General. The Attorney General's Deputy Attorney General, Alfred Atuahene, speaking to journalists after the trial, said the declaration of war as stated by Richard Jakpa in open court today has put the Attorney General Department and the Attorney General himself on a lookout, and they are going to take the necessary measures to ensure that the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dame, is safe.
You heard matters. You make your own judgment out of what you heard. You heard issues about someone operating in the underworld and someone using his legal skills, declaration of war against the Attorney General. All this came up. So, interesting proceedings.
What do you make of the fact that the Attorney General rejected an appeal he made to him to make him a witness when he said you couldn't get him something he had requested for?
That is the prerogative of Attorney General, and we use witnesses that we think will further our cause. There was no decision to use him as a witness. The only decision was to use a witness that we have penciled to call. We tendered what we had on our phone, 100%. If he has others, he knows what to do, because he's still in the box.
What do you also make that he make the point that there was never a plea bargain discussion between himself and the Attorney General?
We'll get there. They are documentary. We'll get there. Today we'll go to a certain point, so come to the chapter 3 and you hear all those things.
And how are the claim that he has declared a war on the Attorney General?
I think it's quite unfortunate, to be frank with you, because that declaration of war, according to him, whether he is acquitted or whether he's convicted, he's declared that war. So he has put us on notice. And so the needed steps will be taken.
Oh, wow. If indeed he said it to the Attorney General at his cousin's house, he should be aware of that already, not in open court.
AG has not admitted such a thing. And so now that we've heard it in open court, you will take the necessary steps.
As in security-wise for the Attorney General?
We'll take the necessary steps.
What would that step entail?
That step, when we take it, you'll get to know it.
Philip Kwachiofoso, who is a member of the opposition NDC, told journalists that the declaration of war by Richard Jakpa doesn't hurt his case.
We get the sense that the Attorney General wants to see that Mr. Jakpa is doing this in retribution for what he believed to be the Attorney General's failure to keep his part of the bargain. But the point is that Mr. Jakpa insisted that he has not said anything that hasn't happened. If I have discussions with you and we agree that you will do something and you fail to do it, and I come out to say that we agreed that we will do this and didn't do it, I have not said anything that is not true. If it were the case that Mr. Jakpa was saying things that have been proven to be untrue by the court, then you could say that some damage has been done to his reputation. But as of now, as far as he's concerned, he has not said anything that did not happen. So whether he was exercising a right of reply or his right to react to what the AG did to him is completely immaterial in this regard. What matters is that, is he saying the truth? What is he saying? Is the AG able to contradict him?
In a related development, the trial of Minority Leader Dr. Kaysul Atuahene is taking a major toll on the business of Parliament after the NDC MP's decision to boycott proceedings whenever their leader is in court. The NDC MPs boycotted a large part of the proceedings yesterday until the Minority Leader returned from court, only to enter the chamber and raise issues of quorum. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante has a wrap of proceedings from the House.
The trial of Dr. Kaysul Atuahene for causing financial loss to the state is happening in the courts, but having a cascading effect on the business of the House. You will recall last week when the House resumed, the minority did indicate that whenever their leader was in court for his trial, they will boycott proceedings. In fact, today they did. And today, sitting started nearly 3 p.m. because the minority MPs were not coming to the floor and the majority MPs also were not in their numbers. In fact, when sitting started, the MPs on the floor were not even up to 20. Later on, when the trial ended and the minority leader did walk into the floor, the NDC MPs started raising issues of quorum.
There is still no quorum. Suspend sitting of the House for a period of not more than 1 hour. Mr. Speaker, can you direct the clerk and table to conduct a head count?
Walked in, they were recognized. No, we must correct that.
Honorable Chief
When they walked in, you were recognized. When you walked in, you were recognized. And when you walked in and you got up to speak, you were recognized. Let that go on the records. What is that?
The second Deputy Speaker, Andrew Amakwesiama, was now under pressure to act according to the dictates of the standing orders. The standing orders provide that whenever an MP raises an issue of quorum, he should instruct the table office to get the bells to be rung in the House. The bell did ring, and after 10 minutes, James Klucha-Veji was on his feet again, pressuring the Speaker of Parliament to actually go by the dictates of the House and suspend Parliament. This nearly degenerated into chaos because, according to the Deputy Speaker, as per his time, the 10 minutes provided by the standing orders had not reached, but it's not something the NDC MPs were ready to countenance.
I don't know the time you are using. My time is not up yet. I'm monitoring my time.
Mr. Speaker.
My time is not up to 10 minutes.
That the bell was rung. When the bell was rung, we all heard it. If you are telling this House or me that you are using your time,
Honorable Veji, I'm left with 2 minutes.
Standing order regulate the conduct of the House. If our own standing order says it, why? No.
Clerk at table.
Mr. Speaker.
Clerk at table.
Mr. Speaker, we are not asking you now
Clerk
to go.
at table.
Mr. Speaker, we are not asking you
Please,
now to go.
Count the members.
No. Ultimately, the MPs on the floor were not up to 92, which would allow for MPs to proceed the business, and then proceeded to suspend sitting for an hour. It is clear that the minority are not willing to back down on their demand that the trial of the minority leader should cease. According to James Klucha-Veji, an MP for Kintamponov, they are not trying to frustrate government business, but they are only asking for the right thing to be done.
We are here. We are here. We are ready to work. Is Honorable Atuahene, who is the leader of the minority, also not qualified to represent his people? So if he's there every day in court, are they not concerned that by that act, he's also not representing his people? If they want us to do the work, and which they attempt frustration, then they should allow Honorable Atuahene should also represent his people. They should drop the case.
It is just right that as a leader of the minority, we also show some sympathy and solidarity with him. Or if even it's midnight, we'll now be transacting government business, why not? We'll do. But in any case, it should be on record that now it's even the minority who are always more in the House. You are in the House here, you have been seeing it. Let your cameras always report it. It's we, the minority, who are always more even in the House.
In the coming days, more and more government business, key bills, among others, are expected to come to the floor. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, when the minority leader is away in court, being prosecuted for causing financial loss to the state, the House will suffer. It is not clear how long the minority intend to hold this, but they say that they are not going to relent in making this demand that the prosecution of their minority leader is dropped. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
Now to the issues of health. The Volta Regional Director of the National Health Insurance Authority, Joseph Homenya, has ridiculed claims that the scheme has collapsed and is unable to meet the claims demand of service providers. He indicated that the scheme is in the best of states and continues to function effectively with the digitization of its system to enhance services and the addition of medication and treatment for some chronic illnesses to the scheme. Mr. Homenya was speaking at the 2023 Annual Performance Peer Review in Ho.
The National Health Insurance Scheme at the end of 2023 has an active membership of 1,167,329 in the Volta region, representing 68% of the region's 2023 projected population. The Regional National Health Insurance Authority achieved its target for the year and was adjudged the best performing region in the country in 2023. Addressing the 2023 Performance Peer Review, the Volta Regional Director, Joseph Homenya, indicated that the scheme continues to make strides in service delivery.
Utilization records in the period made by members of the scheme to the health facilities for the purpose of medical care stood at 26,001,400. So you can see the utilization is very high. People are really patronizing NHIS. It's not collapsing. It's growing in strength and strength. So politicians, say the truth. Thank you very much. We can safely say that the NHIS is safe and in the hands of the competent people. The authority has paid most service providers in the region up to January 2024. Those who are in the system for long knows that this is one of the best times of the scheme.
He announced that about 341,016 children between 6 and 14 years would be registered and issued Ghana cards under the NHIA National Identification Authority partnership.
As part of the government's plan to register children under 18 years for the Ghana card, the NHIA is collaborating with the NIA to spearhead the registration. Staff of the NHIA in the region have been trained, and very soon, both NHIA and NIA staff will start the registration.
The Volta Regional Minister, Dr. Archibald Lecha, asserted that the NHIS is one of the best social interventions introduced in Ghana.
Nobody should say that health insurance is not working. Sometimes I hear things on radio. Even health insurance is not working, even paracetamol they can give you. But when they are sick, they go with their cars. So the fact is that national health insurance is one of the best things that has happened to this country. And we thank President Kufuor for initiating the health insurance scheme.
The Ketu North Municipal Directorate of the NHIE was adjudged the best performing district in the country for increasing enrollment and enhancing the service of the scheme. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News, Ho.
Away from that, flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress, John Dramani Mahama, has asserted that the task at the presidency is a serious responsibility that should be entrusted to capable hands. He says the job of the president should not be trivialized in political campaigning. Mr. Mahama questioned Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's claim of credit for positive outcomes of the NPP government, but failed to accept responsibility for poor governance. Here's a report by Clinton Yeboah.
The Vice President and flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, on campaign trains have been reiterating desires to further the NPP's governance after the 2024 election. In what seems like an indirect jab at Dr. Bawumia's popular catchphrase of access and the steer by Ghanaian voters, former President Mahama said, "There is no place for outdated lies and empty slogans." Mr. Mahama emphasized that Ghanaians are facing critical times, needing genuine efforts to alleviate their suffering rather than shirking essential duties and offering vain promises.
The leadership of Ghana and the office of president are weighty and must be approached with the utmost seriousness. Ghanaians are in dire straits, and this is not the time for comedy. This is not the time Ghanaians are in dire straits, and this is not the time for comedy. This is not the time for concert party about passing a mythical steer to somebody. There is no space for stale falsehoods and gaslighting. Those trivializing the suffering and pain of Ghanaians and reducing important matters of governance to empty slogans and desperate promises cannot come near the leadership of this country.
According to Mr. Mahama, this is not time for jokes and entrusting leadership to someone who is responsible for the country's current turmoil.
Those whose glaring failures at economic management have sucked us into this vortex of despair, despite their lofty talk in opposition, and who now seek to flee from responsibility, cannot be rewarded with the presidency of a nation in such deep crisis. And it is unimaginable to think that those who claim, that some claim, that it's better to have an economy that has defaulted on debt, causing over 1 million bondholders, including elderly pensioners, to suffer financial haircuts, still would try to convince Ghanaians that they are in a much better position than one in which debt servicing was done timeously, without defaults, and when nobody suffered any financial loss. The presidency cannot be handed over to those who present themselves as the future, when they have been the epicenter of our disastrous present.
Reporting for Joy News, my name is Clinton Yabwa.
Now let's do some stories on climate change. As part of efforts aimed at raising public awareness about critical environmental issues, the Bono East Regional Office of the Environmental Protection Agency held a deba at Tanoboase to mark this year's World Environmental Day. Residents of the area were encouraged to inculcate the habits of planting more trees to help minimize the degradation of the transition zone, as well as mitigate the impact of climate change. Anna Sabit has more.
It is the biggest international day for the environment, and it is aimed at reminding people about the importance of nature. Here in the Bono East region, stakeholders led by the Regional Environmental Protection Agency observed the day at Deba in Tanoboase, which was marked under the theme, Degradation in the Transition Landscape, Restore the Tano River Basin. Emmanuel Lungnile is the Regional Manager of the Environmental Protection Agency.
This day is important for raising public awareness about critical environmental issues and encouraging individuals, communities, groups and nations to take actions that are required to protect the environment. Because the environment provides services that are shared. It provides services that are shared in nature.
He bemoaned some human activities that continuously contribute to land degradation in the transition zone and admonished the people, particularly farmers, to develop the habit of planting more trees on their farms to save the situation.
Mind you, we have indicated that for land restoration to make a significant impact on the ecosystem and on our livelihoods, we have to plant a large number of trees in the areas that are degraded, and also commit ourselves to nurturing the trees that we are growing so that they grow into a forest that can, generate the ecosystem benefits such as the soil erosion control, and many others that we have talked about.
Job Osei is the Chief Executive Officer of Green Generation Farms, who are partners to the event. He disclosed that the negative impacts of climate change is adversely affecting human and animal existence, as the situation is even affecting poultry production in the area.
Looking back some years ago, Techiman was more of a forested area. But what do we see today? Gradually, it is turning into a savanna zone. The temperatures we see here today are very high, and this is affecting the poultry production. It's leading into high mortality rates, is leading into the drop in the egg production. So if we all collaborate and protect the environment, we believe we can reduce the impact.
He encouraged the people of the area to embrace tree planting, adding that each house should at least have a tree planted around it.
We have launched a program in the northern region which we call One Household, One Tree, where we encourage people to plant trees. I believe the general public can take a cue from that, where every house is supposed to plant a tree, at least one house, one tree. If that project is able to stand, we'll see that the entire landscape will be covered with trees.
Atuahene of the Tanoboase traditional area, who spoke on behalf of the Atuahene, has promised to ensure that steps are taken to help nurture the trees planted on the day as well as embark on a sensitization campaign to help protect the environment. Sabit, Joy News, Tanabuasi.
In a related development, a delegation of Nigerian environmentalists and waste management experts visited Ghana to tour the Jospon Group of Companies' facilities. The visit aimed to gather insight on advanced waste management and recycling practices to enhance Nigeria's environmental sustainability efforts. There's more in this report, filed by Adobia Asari.
Delegates from the Association of Waste Managers of Nigeria toured the Jospon Group's facilities in Ghana to inspect and learn about its advanced waste management practices. They observed the process of recycling various materials, including paper, plastic, and metals into useful products. Impressed by the innovative and technological approaches being employed at these facilities, the delegation, led by the association's president, Olugbenga Adebola, expressed a hope for future collaborations.
It's very impressive. Wonderful private sector investment, and it's with a facility like this, you can be rest assured that you reduce the effect of the climate change, improve effective and efficient waste management, because of course waste is not a waste unless you waste it, and what is happening here is not wasting the waste, extracting the valuables from the waste and then treating it. So it's impressive. We are doing something in Lagos, but of course Lagos is always ready for improvement. Lagos is ready for, because of course for me there's always a room for cross-border collaboration and all that. So of course Lagos is ready.
Plant manager of the Accra Compost and Recycling Plant, Malik Ganyo, shared his optimism about strengthening ties between Ghana and Nigeria in waste management initiatives.
This delegation is to basically familiarize themselves with our operations as a waste management company. There have been some conversations ongoing with Jospon Group in Nigeria, where we are looking at replicating similar projects across Africa. And this is one of such visits by these key stakeholders to understand the kind of technology we are using, and then look forward to some fruitful conversations that we can escalate into bringing similar facilities in Lagos and beyond. The feedback has been good so far. They are very impressed with the amount of work that have gone on. And the environment, although we are managing waste, it looks like it's very clean. And you all can attest to the environmental consciousness of this facility. And we look forward to replicating similar, if not better, in Lagos and beyond.
Creating waste is inevitable for humans. However, how we manage that waste is a choice. Recycling is essential to preserving our environment. Remember, waste isn't truly waste until it's wasted.
And now, the Sickle Cell Disease Support Group of Ghana is advocating for greater participation of patient support organizations in policy development. In a statement, the Sickle Cell Disease Support Group acknowledged the efforts of the healthcare workforce, the government and non-governmental organizations in the fight against sickle cell disease. They also celebrated the pioneers who've worked tirelessly to increase awareness of the disease, but says significant challenges remain, including intermittent shortages of hydroxyurea, a crucial medication for sickle cell disease, and its limited availability under the National Health Insurance Scheme. The Sickle Cell Disease Support Group emphasized the need for immediate government action to incorporate penicillin prophylaxis into the NHIS to improve survival rates for children with sickle cell disease. They also highlighted the critical shortage of drug compounding and reconstitution pharmacies in government hospitals, which hampers effective treatment and care for sickle cell disease patients. And that's it. Coming up next is Business Update. This is the news review segment on the AM show with me, Sweetie Abochi. Right before I introduce my guest, a gentle reminder that this segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And they're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening at their various locations. Here in Accra, you can find them on the Spintex Road opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronuma Buenhia behind the Angel Educational Complex. In Takrady Anaji Estate, in Tema Community 22, in Techiman Hanswa, and in Nzema, in Esiama in Nzema. You can call them on 0244-867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Now, this morning, I have two gentlemen in the studio with me, Remy Edmondson. And Remy Edmondson is the National Secretary of the Progressive People's Party, PPP. And Nanaya Sapong, Political Assistant to Alan Tremanting, Alliance for Revolutionary Change or Movements for Change. Yeah. Right. Okay, gentlemen, it's another Friday and it's good to have you in the studio with us. How are we feeling?
Oh, feeling good.
I like that we are all, looking culturally appropriate. The Ghanaian culture for Fridays in African friends.
Of course, it's good. And this should remind all of us of the efforts Alan Tremanting put in revamping the textile.
How did we get there? How did we get to cultural appropriate to Alan Tremanting?
Because he is the brain behind African wear.
Okay.
Let's give him the credit.
While like this, I mean, we should be doing this a lot more.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the fact that, I mean, let's look at ownership of these brands, because many of these imported fabrics we wear are not owned by, are not made here. And if we were, they're going to put in a lot of effort to ensure that there was production. It's going to create jobs. People love wearing African wear. I mean, everyone here is looking great. So there should be the effort to put in and ensure that we produce much of these things here and not just import them and complain about
one of the efforts he put in recently when he was Minister for Trade and Industry was to ensure that almost all those collapsing textile industries were back to life. Printex is an example. I mean, it's back to life, it's working. We pushed in for ATL.
Let me give you your minute to get into any topical issue of your choice so that we can stick within our time frame. So, who's going first?
He's my senior brother.
Okay, so senior brother. Over to you.
All right.
What's on your mind this morning?
Yes, this, I mean, it's been our take on the constitutional provision for the president to appoint majority of his ministers from Parliament. And I was quite happy to find out that no less a person than Mr. Sam Okujeto, who is also a member of the Council of State, has finally joined the call for this to be abolished. I mean, he actually goes out to say that no MP should be appointed a Minister of State. And I mean, it's just fed into what we've said over the years, that the PP has said that it's not prudent for somebody to be in Parliament. Currently, we have about 60 Ministers of State who are MPs, and about 16 of them also are cabinet ministers.
Right.
Out of 275, that's quite a significant number. So these same people are supposed to also have oversight of the executive. But if they leave Parliament, come and sit with the executive, make decisions with the executives, and then the same people now come back to Parliament, when these same bills or whatever directive from the government come in, there's no way they are going to properly check the executive undertake this function. The people that they represent also are the ones who are also worse off as a result. So we are happy. We want to re-emphasize this call that, I mean, it's something, when we're talking about constitutional amendment, this is something every president aspirant should be asked about, that let's ensure that, I mean, there are so many millions of qualified Ghanaians out there who can also be tapped to take up some of these positions. And let's leave MPs to do their job, represent their people, make sure that they enact laws in consultation with their citizenry who elected them into parliament, stay in parliament and do their work.
That's some reforms that we have to look at in the
Constitution.
Constitution.
Yes, very important. I mean, one of the key outstanding reforms.
Nana Yosapon, what's on your mind?
What's on my mind has to do with the health sector. I think that today some of the papers might have reported it. We've heard that the lab technicians are on strike and all of that, and it's affecting a lot of citizens, you know, and would want to appeal to the Ministry of Health to, as a matter of urgency, you know, sit with them around the table and discuss. Health is so important, and I believe that this is a call to all the political stakeholders to actually have a take, you know, make a statement on the health sector. We as ARC or Movement for Change, with our GTP that we're going to launch on Monday, we have a strong statement on the health sector, and I believe that we should all do. The health sector is very important. It should be an issue of national security.
It's a rather sad one. We hear of pregnant women.
Yes,
Listen to a certain old woman who says, "Mibanu owu, waye fita,
that is what is.
You know,
I listened to that tape and I was like, if it were my mother, and if I were that child, then what happens?
Yeah, what happens?
You understand? So I think that as a matter of urgency, we should. The same urgency our MPs and our ministers sit around the table deep into the night to sign loans, they should put that same sense of urgency into the matters of our health.
I mean, the controversy is that the leadership of these medical laboratory technicians is, they're saying that, you know, the authorities or those who they're appealing to come to the table for negotiation are more interested in releasing statements that make them look good, rather than actually coming. They've actually hired, they booked a place, they went there, invited the leadership and said, come and let's sit and talk. They didn't show up. So instead of just putting out statements and saying that, yeah, we acknowledge, actually give them what they're looking for.
Have you also thought of the fact that probably before then, or before now, they have also been chasing after leadership for them to...
Exactly.
Yeah, for 2 years, they said.
So then they would also have to put out these statements and make these public pronouncements for their members to also know that, listen, we've not gone to, you know, or we've not had any conversation with them, or we are not compromised. But then it is just a mere fact that the people are not listening to us. But if the leadership also puts in an effort to sit with them, make it publicly known that, listen, come, let's sit, let's negotiate. We might not be able to give you all that you are asking for. Let's all be patriotic. We might not be able to give you all you're asking for, but then we have lives on the line. People are dying, and that
and I mean,
consider it.
Such decisions are not arrived at lightly. I mean, these are professionals who understand very well the impact of the work they are doing, how important it is. So they wouldn't, out of malice, undertake such, I mean, decisions, yes, but it will be as a result of, that's what they're saying, refusal of the government to heed to their conditions of service, that they want this negotiations concluded. And I think it's important. I mean, I'll join calls for the stakeholders, the National Labour Commission and the government to, as a matter of urgency, meet with them to ensure that they can call off the strike and then go back to work. Because not everybody can, as we say, not everybody can afford.
The now people labs.
Yes, people are forced to go to private
some
labs.
Some hospitals have actually invited private lab technicians to come and set camp in their hospital so that they can provide these services. Lab is like very pivotal in diagnosis and treatment of.
And I mean, we are talking about this this issue of poverty. I'm sure we'll discuss from the Ghana Statistical Service about so many Ghanaians, 7.3 million Ghanaians. Yes. How many of these can afford, in such difficult situations in this time, be able to afford private medical services? That's too much for them.
Let's get into the papers, gentlemen. Okay. I'll start with the Daily Guide newspaper. On the front page, Baumia's KIA trainees has out. NDC MPs abandoned Parliament for Atuahene. I declared war on Dame, according to Richard Jakpa. KNUSTVC gets 2 more years. Seth Tekpa, Sherry Ayite sabotaged ambulance case. Let's get into the paper now. I'll start with this declaration of war by Richard Jakpa on the Attorney General. So Richard Jakpa yesterday shocked the High Court in Accra when he disclosed that he had declared war on Attorney General and Minister of Justice Godfrey Aboadame, and that it does not matter whether he is jailed or acquitted. According to him, the Attorney General is using his law skills and knowledge to take his liberty away from him unjustly. Quote, and I'm also going to use my underworld skills to pay him and deal with him. I said, use what you know best in your law, and I'll use what I know best on the streets, and we will see who will survive. I mean, this sums up the story for me, because this is day 3 or the 3rd day of cross-examination of this man, and it's been accusations of accusations. I met him here, I met him there, he said this to me, I'm just collateral damage. It's got to the point where he's threatening to use underworld powers. What's your take on the matter? I'll start with Nana Yosapon.
Sweetie, you know my stand when it comes to this dummy, draft that the Attorney General and Jakpa are playing with us.
They're playing with us?
Of course. We need our money.
The kind of thing you see in movies, huh?
Yeah. That's like a movie. Listen, Ghana has lost money, all right?
So where's the money in all of this?
Where's the money in all of this? That is what is important. Are they giving us our money or they are giving us our ambulances? That is my priority. What is important to Ghanaians is either we get our money or we get our ambulances. When we are done with that, you can go and deal with other matters. Whoever called whoever has other criminal implication, whatever it is, what is important to the ordinary citizen? What is important to me who has been paying nuisance taxes? And out of these nuisance taxes, money was generated, and we cannot. 2.7.
2.37 million euros. Yeah.
That is a lot of money. I wish I had a calculator.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money. And that is what is important to us.
Okay.
It's either they are giving us our money or they are giving whatever. This back and forth, who texted who sent who to whose number is not important. It doesn't bring back our ambulances. You see, this will not bring back the life of that ordinary woman who was dumped by the roadside along the Winneba Road. It doesn't bring back joy to the face of that woman who was lamenting about the child who needs a lab test to be able to get the diagnosis.
Right.
What is important to us as Ghanaians is either they give us our 2-point-something million euros or they bring the ambulances. There was a contractual agreement. Let's deal with that matter first.
Okay.
That is a fundamental of it.
Now, it's ricocheted into affecting the business of parliaments because the minority MPs are saying that they will, in solidarity with their leader, hold on a second, in solidarity with their leader, they will boycott parliament every time that Dr. Kaysel Atuahene has to be in court because the judge refused to grant him leave.
But sweetie, were you expecting anything different?
Let me give Remy the chance to react to this. And
yes, and I mean, to add to my brother's take, I mean, all of this would have been avoided, personally, if the AG had not conducted himself the way and manner he did. I mean, yes. I mean, engaging with the accused in a manner in which he's being alleged to have done. And again, it casts a slur once again on the whole image. But quite worrying also for me is the perception of injustice in this matter and what it pertains for the ordinary Ghanaian who may not have the resources to defend themselves when the time comes. I mean, it calls for a look into the perception of delivery of justice in this country. It's a fact that so many people are in jail because most of them didn't even have the opportunity to be able to hire counsel to represent them. They get to court, sometimes they indicate that police force them to admit their guilt when they are innocent, or sometimes they are coerced to say that, okay, you say you are guilty, the judge will give you this,
confession.
you know. So I mean, it calls for reforms in delivery of justice in this country, and I would hope that the AG would really look at how this whole thing is panning out in the interest of the position, the judicial service, and the country at large. I mean, it's unfortunate that the judge, I mean, I would have expected that in times when maybe he doesn't have to be in court, like, for example, in these few days, he's not being cross-examined. It has to be Japa. He's also representing, he has constituency he's representing. And as much as we all want to see this matter dealt with speedily, I think I would expect that there should have been a balance to ensure that his parliamentary duties, and he's also just not an MP, but the leader of the minority. He's also involved very much in government business. You know,
but the question is, should the minority MPs actually boycott parliament business?
This is the political twist.
Of course, he's
this is the political twist.
He's required to be there.
Exactly.
So must they?
Don't forget that when this take came out, we had before the AG's assistant spoke, it was the members of the ruling government who came out with some political twist and actually defending and even indicate that he's not going to resign when he hadn't spoken himself. So that alone invites the opposition minority NDC to also come in, because as they are alleging, this seems to be a ploy per the allegation to keep him out of parliament, keep him, eventually jail him if they get their way and take away his seat. So they're also going to make this very political. I mean, it's a fight both in court and out of court as well. That's how this is playing out.
I see this more as a political fight than a patriotic fight. You understand? The duopoly, that kind of entitlement that the two political parties have, thinking that Ghanaians have no other choice, is what is making them behave the way they do. Not, I mean, you have the laws working. Your leader is in court. Yes, I mean, he has to face the law. He has to be able to deal with matters.
Okay.
And then because he's in court, you say that you will not go and do the work that the people have elected you to do, for which you are being paid to do. In my view, I think that in any day when they have not gone to Parliament, they should not be paid. And if they have not gone to court within a certain...
They should not be paid when any day they boycott Parliament.
They boycott Parliament, sorry.
Okay.
They should not be paid. We should calculate the man hours. If it fits within a certain hours, and we think that any MP who has not appeared in Parliament for the purposes or for the reason being that his leader was not in court, and if we can find our way to, I mean, it's 6 months already to elections.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to do something. Our MPs cannot be playing with our minds.
All right, let's get to more stories now. Baumia's Kaya trainees pass out. So a total of 600 first cohort of Kaya trainees who recently underwent the skill, and this is on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. So a total of 600 first cohorts of Kaya trainees who recently underwent the Skills Empowerment Program initiative of the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, dedicated to empowering a total of 5,000 female head porters and offer transitional job pathways and enhance the socio-economic status, have graduated after a month training and successfully passed out. The first cohort of Kaya trainees were trained in skills such as soap and detergent, baking, pedicure and manicure, beading, bedding, decor, and makeup artistry. The beneficiaries from the Medina and Ashaman campuses, respectively, were also given financial management and business development skills, as well as a starter pack and micro grants to start their own businesses. Just about a month or so ago that this was launched. So, I mean, I don't know about you gentlemen, but if it's working, it's working. But how well skilled or well trained can these people be in a month? I know that even in learning skills such as pedicure and manicure, it takes at least 3 months. And so what? Was it a crash course? What's happening here? I want your take on this, Remy.
Yeah, it's.
But first, you admit that it's working. They did say that this is going to be a batch by batch thing.
I said this the last time I was here, that I just see this as just a grand cosmetic effort. We have over 100,000, I mean, per a national dialogue, KIA dialogue held in 2022, January, indicated there were over 100,000 KIA in the country. Let's not forget, it's not just Accra, they're in Kumasi and other parts of the country. Now, let's say you have this number, what is it, 5,000 you plan to train. The question is, how do we stem the influx of KIA in this country? We complain about brain drain from Ghana, but that's also the same as HR, human resource drain from these northern parts of the country. And that also is going to affect them economically. Something is causing this, and that is what we should deal with and root it out. And I would wish that the Vice President would have focused on the numerous interventions that were initiated for the benefit of the northern parts, the people of the northern parts of this country, which were completely wasted. This one district, one dam, one village, one dam, and all of these initiatives, which money's gone down the drain. Monies that were sunk with the intention to boost agriculture, which would have boosted livelihood, giving employment, it's all gone down the drain. And so if they finish school and there's nothing left to do, they have no choice but to move out of the northern region and come down. And for me, this is work that is dignified. I don't think any of us will be happy carrying. Look, I was in a market 2 days ago, and every step I take, because probably I'm a male, I'm holding a bag, somebody approaches me, and they are ranging from...
Did you say it's dignified?
Come again?
Did you say the KIA...
I say it's not dignified work.
It's not dignified.
It is not dignified work. Yes, and now I've realized the number has increased, because every 2-3 steps I take, somebody approaches me, and the age is ranging from young girls are young, maybe 13, 14. I mean, I'm not even seeing elderly women, which I wasn't seeing before. Yes, oh, even when what I'm holding is just so small. I hope you understand. Yeah, it tells you how serious this issue is. So I am not too enthused about this whole project. I mean, you are doing this...
But that's the point, though. To take these people off the streets, to give them some skills, to empower them.
Yeah, I'm saying that,
I mean,
you see,
the security...
how many of these are you going to be able to train all these hundreds of thousands of KIA? And more importantly, like I said, when you are done, you see, more are going to come. Every year we have an influx, they keep increasing. So I'm saying, put in the necessary measures. These monies, it's not a bad idea to do this, it's great, but I'm saying, there's a root cause that is being avoided, that's not being addressed. Until we do that...
Rural-urban migration.
Exactly, it's very important. See, there are towns that when the youth finish SS, even they just move to Accra. What do they come and do? Mate. Where do they sleep? Out in the open. Because it's a better alternative for them than to stay back at home and starve and not have anything doing. So these are real issues that we do. Let's deal with the root cause and not undertake some of these things just for... I mean, look at the fanfare, the sustained media fanfare that has been focused on...
I don't know if it's a fanfare, Remy.
It is. But I mean, I'm not... This is not something... I'll just give a thumbs down for this completely any day.
Noted. They were giving 1,000 CDs in a day. You know, they're collaborating with these TVET institutions for the training. So, Nanaya Sapon.
Sweetie.
Yeah. Is this a good thing?
How much,
would you say?
How much did you buy your makeup kit?
Oh, more than 1,000 CDs. They received 500 at the beginning, and when they graduated, when they passed out, they got the extra 500 Ghana CDs.
It's a brilliant idea, wanting to move our sisters from their current status of being KIA and giving them a certain skill training that would help them to at least have a decent livelihood. But is that the best way to go about it? Is that how we think we can do it? Have we looked at the major causes of KIA, what brings about the KIA? And if we've been able to look at what brings about KIA, then it means that we should be able to at least deal with the situation. I mean, we are talking about lack of education. We're talking about agricultural challenges in terms of even putting food on the table, that runs into poverty, right? We're talking about the rural-urban drift or migration. In fact, to an extent, in recent discussions, somebody added social media influence into these matters, all right? So they come from the villages to the towns. They have the opportunity to buy these phones. They take pictures, they send them, and their brothers and sisters see it, and then they are also excited. Hey, my sister is in Accra, my sister is in Kumasi, but the situation the person finds himself or herself is not defined in that picture. Sweetie, 1 month of training will not make somebody so skilled enough that you would set and allow that person to do your makeup.
How sure are you that 1 month? So there are some people who are very skilled, but they don't have the capital to, enroll in these institutions or even pay for the training, the cost of training.
So if we want to give them training,
this is better than none.
If we want to give them training, let's do it properly. In as much as they explained that it was an intensive man-hour training, 1 month, in my view,
it's not enough. Okay.
To put them where we want them to be.
Okay.
Let us deal with the issue of agriculture. Are we looking at bringing about a modernized, revolutionary agricultural approach, creating jobs in the areas where majority of these people are coming from? Are we looking at actually creating a enabling environment within the areas where they are coming from and giving them the ease to do business?
Right.
If we create these things there for them, they will not come. In any case, they are done with the training. Are they going to stay in Accra? Or are we taking them back and establishing them there? Or we're going to leave them here? If we're going to leave them here,
I would say, I don't know for sure, but the smart and resourceful ones having, this skill might want to go back and apply their trade.
That just sheds more that the whole policy, the whole activity really needs. It should be long term. That's why I say it's cosmetic. It should be long term.
If they're going to stay in Accra, it means that it's going to be attractive for others to come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we should find a way establishing them in the areas where they are coming from. Let us make those places living worth or worth living so that they do not move. But if we're going to go about this in this cosmetic manner, we're going to go round the cycle. We're going to go round the cycle. Next year, we're going to come here. I think in 2019 UNFPA report, I think we had about 100,000, as my brother was saying, KIAs across the country.
Right.
Let's get the statistics for next year. Let's see.
Let's get into other stories. NFA warns TV channels, they should obtain copyrights to movies before they show them on their various TV channels. Strengthen international audits to improve public financial systems. Steering through change, the role of interim leadership, CEOs, national best cocoa farmers go on UK educational trip. This is still the Daily Guide newspaper. So these and other stories, pick one for yourself. On the back page, Kotoko face Hartford Athletic at Maiden Neckfest. Betway announces Fly X win boost. All set for the 2024 Pru Ride. And Peter J. Emmanuel Hammond in a group photograph with partners. That is on the story of the Pru Ride. So pick one for yourself and get into it and get into the stories. I'll do the new finder now and then I'll come to you, gentlemen. CD risks further pressure when Ghana resumes debt servicing, according to Prof. Mensah. Heat wave claims lives of Ghanaian pilgrims in Saudi Arabia. This is the new finder newspaper. And I'm doing the headlines now. Ghana fails to meet HIV reduction target in 10 years. First batch of KIA graduates from skills training program. We just got into that story. Let's do the story on page 2 about the risk of the CD further receiving some more pressure. Yesterday, I listened to the finance minister saying that although the cedi is depreciated comparatively, last year what we're doing and what the cedi is doing now, the cedi is still strong. And I'm saying, so does that mean that we're okay? If compared to last year, we're doing better than we are doing better today than we were doing last year around this time. Does that mean there's more money in our pockets? Does that mean that the cedi has more purchasing power against the major currencies? Does that mean that inflation isn't actually making... I bought one tangerine 2 days ago for 7 Ghana cedis, and I posted it on my status. So the response was, are you surprised? Nobody was surprised that one little tangerine. I mean, my fist is bigger than the tangerine, and it was 7 Ghana.
You got it at a very good
and the response
price.
is,
and that hurts.
am I surprised? I was so hurt.
Yes. That was at a good price.
I thought I was saying something. I was showing them something.
Yes. The lady knows you, I guess.
Let's get into the lady knows me. Yeah. Let's get into the story. So, a finance expert and senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, has pointed out to the conditionalities of Ghana's program with the International Monetary Fund as a key factor behind the weakening of the cedi. Now, according to Prof. Mensah, the restructuring and suspension of debt service payments have significantly impacted the foreign exchange market and the local currency. Quote, the debt suspension, particularly external debt suspension, indirectly fixes your currency because it reduces demand. When the government is not servicing its debts, it is not on the market demanding dollars. Prof. Mensah explained. He warned that the true value of the cedi would become apparent once debt payments resume, suggesting that the current situation is artificially suppressing the cedi's value. There you have it. But what's your take on the depreciation of the cedi? I mean, the finance minister says it's still strong. Remy, how are we doing?
I think right now it's every Ghanaian is feeling this. I mean, the true state of the economy is out there in the streets. I mean, when we all go out, go to the market, when we all go out to purchase items, in your utility bills that keep rising, in your fuel that at the pump that keeps rising. So for me, I'm quite worried. People are joking online about that probably we might hit 20 by December, and that's really not funny. Last night, a service provider called me to actually cry that he made a transaction with his bank and he paid over $16, and he was not expecting it. He was shocked. So I mean, he just called to alert me that whatever payments my business will be making next month, I should take note. I mean, this is what we are facing. And there seems to be no end in sight, especially for businesses that have to rely on Forex and need to purchase dollars to operate. We have lots of businesses.
80 now, I think.
Yes, there are a lot of businesses that need to import products, buy products from outside, and it's really crazy, you know, when you find yourself in that situation. So we need more reassurance. These kind of words do nothing to us when we go out there and then we are buying tomatoes 10 cedi for 3 cedis. How many people can actually afford this? It's quite serious, you see, to be able to put food on the table for their families in the evening every day. I would expect that the government will be, and again, it's quite worrying notice that we are experiencing this even when the government is not servicing debts.
Which is the story exposing,
the
fundamentals. We are not paying our debts.
That's what makes
servicing
it
them.
So scary.
And so receiving money from IMF doesn't really.
We are chasing these creditors and negotiating with them, probably pushing back payment timelines, but eventually we will still have to pay. And whether it's this government or another government that comes in after December 7th, we Ghanaians will still be there. The governments will change, but our Ghanaians will still be there. We'll still face these situations. So I would expect more reaction, not words, but let's see, roll out the plans and let us know that these are the specific steps we are taking as a government between now and December, when election, to ensure that we alleviate the situation, we arrest the situation, and even not just between now and, but even beyond for any successive governments that will come. Because if it doesn't happen that way, and then there are no real changes in how the performance of the cedi. It means when a time will come, whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now, we will still have to start paying at a point.
Right.
And then I don't know what's going to happen.
Nana Yosapon.
Yes, really. The last time when this issue about the CD came up, I made a statement. I said that we sit in our offices, we put on our tie and our coat, and we think that we are dealing with the issue of the economy. But when you have gone out into the market, that is where you understand that practically you are doing nothing. The CD does not understand English language. What the CD understands, it's practical, economical policy prescriptions. When you are sick and you go to the hospital and the doctor speaks English, you don't understand.
Oh, I understand English.
But what the sickness would understand to go is that proper diagnosis, that
From the
proper
lab.
medication
I had to add that.
that you would take in to be able to get healed. What finance minister is saying is English.
Right.
You understand? Sweetie, probably we've gotten to a point where Ghana would have to develop a comprehensive and compelling case for some debt forgiveness so that we go and make another HEPIC too.
Are you sure even if they forgive our debts, we will not plunge this country
because
right back into debt?
If we begin to, or if we start to pay our debts, or we begin to deal with the debts we have now, probably we would be somewhere else. This is just us. You go to take your, let me put it in a layman's language, you go to take your salary. Instead of them taking the loans you've taken and the high purchases you've done from source, they say, no, we're not taking it. You take your money.
Right.
So we take our money. We're paying nothing. You're not paying any bill. You're not doing anything. Just your food and your water. And
yes,
yet,
man.
you are not able to survive. Then what happens when you begin to pay all of these, your debts that you owe and your loans in the bank? That is the situation we find ourselves.
Yeah.
And we need practical solutions. They should be realistic. They should be real with us. They should come and tell us what the problem is.
I have to cut you, but points made. We need practical, pragmatic solutions. I'll just run through some quick headlines and then you find a newspaper and then I'll come to you. Ghana fails to meet HIV target in 10 years. NLC orders CTAC to call off strike. Heat wave claims lives of Ghanaian pilgrims in Saudi Arabia. Of course, our condolences to those families. In the GTA, CEO calls for review of Supreme Court's verdict on celebrity endorsement of alcoholic drinks. This and many other stories in the New Finder newspaper. The Ghanaian publisher, Baumia Running Mates, government rubbishes bogus NIB survey. Headline sometimes. What is really at stake in 2024 elections? Gender Minister pushes for passage of affirmative action bill on the ambulance case. Court admits Jakpa AG WhatsApp chat into evidence. We've dealt into all that earlier on in the show. So, Remy, you have the daily graphic.
Yes.
What does it say?
The main headline here says 7.3 million Ghanaians face poverty, have no access to education, health, employment. A Ghana Statistical Service report. Other headlines here are Africans must own logistics shipping space. That's from McDan. And then Bishop Dobe tells the government to provide self-help leadership to reverse difficulties.
We can do one story.
Yes, and then, yeah, that's okay. So I think I'll take the 7.3 million Ghanaians facing poverty. This was disclosed at a workshop held by the Ghana Statistical Services. It's saying that nearly 1 out of every 4 Ghanaians have no or limited access to healthcare, education, employment, and also live in poor conditions. A report released by the GSS has revealed. This means 24.3% of Ghanaians, that's over 7.31 million people, experience multi-dimensional poverty, facing deprivations in healthcare, education, employment, and living conditions.
That's about sums up the reality on the ground for every Ghanaian, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, to add to this, the context, you know, the government is also behind on the LEAP payments. I'm saying it because these people feature the beneficiaries, those marginally poor who fall below the poverty line, who are supported by government. And I'm told since February, the payments have stopped, and there's no indication when the government is going to continue. So,
right. But time will not allow us to go further.
Sure.
We have the Ghanaian Times. If you can quickly tell us what the banner headlines and then one major.
The Ghanaian Times. We have healthcare delivery challenge. Patients stranded at hospitals nationwide as laboratory technicians lay down tools. We have increased revenue mobilization to build robust economy. Professor Festus Ebotekson. And then we have 2,560 women dying of breast cancer annually in Ghana, alarming. We have the ambulance case, AG Jakpa WhatsApp conversation admitted in evidence. And so I would want us to take a look at the increased revenue mobilization to build a robust economy. It says that an associate professor of economics at the University of Ghana, Legon, Professor Festus Ebotekson, has underscored the need to prioritize public expenditure and increase revenue mobilization to build a robust economy. We need to put a cap on debt to the gross domestic product, the GDP ratio, and reform the Fiscal Responsibility Act to build a resilient economy. An economy that is diversified, increasingly competitive in the export sector, highly productive, and invest in technological bidding to support small and medium enterprises, he added.
Right.
I don't want to go further, but this is what we have been preaching with Alan Shermanton, that we need an enterprise economy. We need an economy that would actually invest in manufacturing and industry.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for breakfast. But before we go, special happy birthday to Mr. Francis Osei, NPP Second Vice Chairman, Tema Central Constituency, and the CEO of BTC Logistics, Chris Pharmacy, Tema, and Planet Oil. You are a kind-hearted man, and I pray God's abundant blessings upon your life. And that's coming from Chief Jerry Forson, CJ host of Jason Sem on Adom FM. Another happy birthday going out to Atuahene Techi Abedu Kennedy, a clinician at One Community Mental Clinic in East Legon, wishing you everything that brings you happiness. Here's to another year of success and poverty. Enjoy your special day to the fullest. And that's coming from your father, Auntie Ruth, and your siblings, and all your loved ones. Happy birthday to you. And that's it for this morning. But before we go, quick announcement that we at the Multimedia Group are proud to announce that we are the official free-to-air radio broadcast rights owners of Euro 2024. We will deliver live commentary of selected games, including the opening game and the final, with our team of talented commentators and analysts on Joy FM, Love FM, Hits FM, Adom FM, and Inshira and Asempa FM. And apart from the live radio commentary, the Multimedia Group has also curated custom Euro 2024 shows on radio, TV, and digital, as well as live viewing events, all aimed at delivering unparalleled experience of the competition of this Euro 2024 to you, our discerning listeners. The Multimedia Group's radio broadcast coverage of the Euro 2024 tournament is courtesy of Sporty TV and Sporty Bet. Watch selected matches of Euro 2024 live on Sporty TV channel 36 on your digital TV sets. Gentle reminder that this segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And my guest in the studio that joined me for the news review was Nanayao Sapom from the Movement from Change Camp, or Alliance for Revolutionary Change.
We're launching our GTP on Monday.
Okay, you're launching your GT.
Yes,
GT what?
GTP. That's a great transformational plan.
Right, on Monday.
Yes.
And Remy Edmondson, National Secretary for the PPP. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, for the pleasure.
And it's a wrap. Sports is coming up next. Stick and stay.
Before we decided to take the conversation here to your lovely pitch side of business side of campus, let me put it that way, with all these pictures. I mean, this is, look, I can tell you, this pitch
it has better playing quality than the ones we play our national team football. And I'm not even capping. This is the truth, because I've been to Baba Yara multiple times. I've been to the Accra Sports Stadium multiple times. We don't even have this quality of pitch. I mean, this is what? This is one of how many?
8.
8 pitches?
Yeah.
Are they all full size or?
3 full size, 1 9-a-side, 4 7-a-side.
Wow. And I noticed that to get from where the classrooms are to here, which is where the residence is as well.
For the boys, the girls stay over there.
It's quite a walk. How big is this whole land altogether when you got it? Because it seems like it's a whole campus.
About 60 acres.
60 acres?
Yeah. Wow. So, and we have a lot more development to do. So now we're focusing on the next stage of development for the campus here. We have a lot of ideas.
Yeah. I mean, and building 8 pitches here, that must have been a lot of work, I believe.
Yeah, that was the first time the Mansour Group supported us, because they own Mantrack, which is the Caterpillar dealership here. So that's as far back as 2013 that they stepped in. And
so you've been partnering with Mansour for a long time?
That was like a one-off thing where actually the guy who's the new group CEO, Dan Dickinson, he's on the global board of Caterpillar.
Right.
But he's been with us for a long time.
Yes.
So when we wanted to build the pitches, then he called through Caterpillar and he got to Ludwig Mansour.
Okay.
So I didn't actually meet, but we had a couple of phone calls and he was like, look, I was trying to build one more pitch. And he said, okay, how long do you need the machines for? So I just tried my luck. I said, 6 months. He said, no problem.
Wow.
So when they send the machines, I told them, you build pitches until until the 6 months is up.
As long as you can.
Yes. So I was planning to have 1 more, 3, and then we ended up with 8.
Wow.
And then, you know, like each year I'll send him a happy Christmas note or appreciation. He'll always reply. And then later on, so there was a contact there, but it wasn't like a formal partnership.
Yeah.
And then later on, the same Dan Dickinson said, oh, the rumor is that the Mansours want to buy a Premier League club. Why don't we talk to them about what we're doing for the reasons I said before about stability and growth? So Ludwig came here and he got it immediately. And then he said, look, no matter what happens, I'll build a Right to Dream in Egypt.
Wow.
And then if you guys can persuade me that there's a bigger business model, then maybe we'll go for the whole thing. So we spent a year talking about the bigger idea while we were planning Egypt, and then at the end of the year, his father came in at the end, and I think that was more about character assessment and other things than the business model. And they said, okay, this is going to be our football project, global football project.
That's amazing. At the moment, how many players do you have in this, both boys and girls, in this right?
About 120 here.
About 120. And you know what the ratio is?
About 20 girls. So I really want to work on expanding the girls' side, yeah.
These are the very pictures where Mohamed Kudus, Kamal Sulemana, David Akam, Thomas Japan, listen, I'm not even copying when I say you've literally built a national team for Ghana. Because at any given time, right now, it's impossible to have a Black Stars gathering without Right to Dream graduates. And yes, these are not just peripheral players. These are players that are actually making huge impact. Some of the best there is not just that, even on the continent. And I think you're probably on your way to producing a first African footballer of the year. These pictures, for me, it's one thing that gives me a great idea about how serious you are about this academy. Because listen, even with our own national team, we can't even get quality pitches to play on. But let's talk about some of the talents that have come through here briefly, and then I would just say, and then we'll move on to the San Diego project and wrap it up. If you look at all the talent that has passed through here, all the years that you've had this academy, who would you say is probably the most talented on a football pitch?
The best player I ever saw here was Kelvin Ofori.
What happened to him?
He signed in Germany. Now he's playing in Slovakia. But he was
What made him so special?
He was
skillful.
Yeah. He was. you know, I don't like it when people call me telling me that they have a Messi type player because but he was a left-footed in that style. But it changes, you know, different stages, different players develop, and then what matters is when you're fully grown, like how it is. But if you talk about academy football, that's the best player. Even at Man U, I never saw a player as good as Kelvin Ofori. And then Kamal, like leading up to when he left, and then his start in FCN is unbelievable. He still will be unbelievable. Like when it settles down, like that's a world-class player. Yeah. And then, you know, Kudus didn't get in on the scouting system. He came to play against us.
That's how he got in?
Yeah.
Tell me the story.
No, he came with Strong Tower to play against us, and he just finished everybody. Wow. So it was like, okay. And I think he'd been in the system, but he hadn't made it all the way. I can't remember the detail. Yeah. But I remember standing right where your camera is, and he was playing here.
On this very pitch?
This pitch, when he was young, and I was like, woo. And then he was invited in. And then in the early years...
Do you have a lot of those kids? Kids that... So that's a special case.
It's not often, yeah. And then in the early years, Yao Yaboa was unbelievable player. And he can play anywhere. He's like Kojo Asamoah. He can play anywhere.
Midfield, 10. Yeah.
So I'm very happy for him. He's very happy with his life. And he's doing great. You know, he scored the winning goal in the MLS Cup final. Yeah. But I still think there's more to come from him. I think he'll become more dominant in the MLS. And I hope to see him, you know, he does play left back in America. And so I think the left back position is a little bit competitive in the Black Stars as well. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a fair point that you make. Also about Kamaldeen Sulemana, because I thought, quite frankly, that he was, I mean, at FC National, he was unplayable. Like, he was explosive. That has sort of taken a little bit of... What do you think has happened there? I don't think that his development has accelerated at the same rate that he was going when he was at FC National.
No, I think, you know, it's an old expression, form is temporary, class is permanent.
True.
And for Kamal, like, if you watch Jeremy Doku, if you watch Vinicius Jr. in training, their potential, you compare it to Kamal, you're talking about a player in the same ballpark. Right. Obviously, in certain phases of their development, they pushed a little bit, but, you know, with modern day, most footballers will still be playing when they're 36, 37. So he's right at the start of the journey still. And he has everything that it takes. So even I watched the game against Central African Republic. If you look at positioning, timing of runs, everything, he was the one who was supposed to score. So of course everybody will focus on the actual finishing, but the real thing is right time, right position, all that type of stuff. He's a world-class player.
Yeah. And Kudus was the one, Kamaldeen, we didn't see him in the youth teams. Kudus was the one we saw a lot in the youth teams, under 17, under 20, he and Sadiq Ibrahim. Kudus was quite chubby at some point, it looked like. And
that's your words, not my words.
It's my word. And to be fair, in that under 17, there were a lot of people that thought that he wasn't quite pulling his weight. And I remember, I don't know if it's an interview that you did or something. I see somewhere that you, the very first day, I think someone might have raised the same concern with you or something, and you told the person in the face that, look at this kid, he would go right to the very top. And that you did have some of those comments about him at some point, didn't you?
That he was chubby?
About Kudus not necessarily being maybe slightly big for his age?
You know, Kudus has like size 13 feet and he's not very tall. So he's
size 13?
Yeah. So he's like, genetically, he's a unique athlete.
Yeah.
And you have to be, you know, this is where I think Right to Dream is doing a good job, that we've brought in best in class practice. We share it among our group. so that we don't fall into stereotypical comments about players.
Yeah.
You know, you have to take, especially at that top level, every athlete as an individual case. You have to be patient with the process. We can definitely be too fast in Ghana to write a player off. And then the other fact is that we develop our players to be successful in Europe. And then from that, they transition into the Black Stars.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the players playing in the junior national teams, they're developed in the Ghana system. So when they play African football, they know everything about African football. Whereas our guys are playing in Europe on a regular basis from a young age, which gives them the platform to establish themselves in the Premier League and other things. And then from there, obviously, they'll have a big impact for Ghana, but we kind of do things the other way around.
Yeah.
So like we wouldn't really listen to any analysis on how our players were doing in the youth national teams and take it too seriously. We obviously scout the games ourselves and then make our own mind, help the player with some reflections on that. But I think every parent in Ghana would want their kid to establish themselves in Europe first and then tackle the Black Stars, rather than focus on the youth national teams but not really know how to play in Europe. And generally the transition of Ghanaian players into Europe over the last few years has not been too strong, and that's because the style of play has differentiated so much now in Europe with Pep's kind of revolution that a lot of people are copying. It's very hard for a young African player, if he's not hearing the terminology and getting the coaching from, like, even from 10 years old.
Yeah.
If you're not getting that, and then you just step into Europe at 18 and you hear a coach talking about all of those terminologies, imagine the kind of pressure to try and adapt to all of that. If you speak to Michael, Essien and Derek and others, when they arrived in Europe, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was much more like simple basics, so you could adapt. But now you come in and you'll be talking about all phases of the game, and you're counter-pressing, and if a centre-back receives the ball on his weaker foot, then we're going to press with this direction. If he receives it on the other. And so as a young midfielder, let's say you play 8, and then early on, and then, you know, the coach goes back and says, I don't think this guy can learn, which is an equally ignorant comment on the European side. But that's how it goes. So we just want to prepare our kids for success.
I mean, Kudus is already really good, a very special talent. But from where you sit, just how far do you think he can go? He seemed to have early troubles at Ajax. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. I thought he should have been playing the whole time. I don't know what the issue was with Eric Ten Hag. He's shown at West Ham that he's an absolutely fantastic player. When you look at his journey, the trajectory he's going, how soon or how much longer before we see him being maybe at Real Madrid or, you know, one of those big clubs?
Well, the one thing about Kudus is, like, he knows what's best for himself.
Yeah.
He's managed his career very successfully. And so he knows.
You don't manage these kids, right?
No. They have their own agents. Sometimes they do it themselves. So he'll make good decisions. And it's not for me to comment, like, the right time for him to step and everything else. But, yeah, you mentioned Real Madrid. For me, I think the right side of the Real Madrid team, if you have Kylian at 9, Vinny on the left, that kind of different, because he's not like a raw pace guy like those guys, like he's a different style. I think he can play for any team in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's talk about San Diego FC. And even before we talk about that, I want to pick your opinion on this. Now, apart from the fact that you're developing a lot of players that are going on and doing well in Europe and coming back, also helping our national team, you're also doing the same thing for coaches as well. I mean, Ghanaian coaches. And from the top of my head, you had Lai Kingston, you had Didi Dramana, you had Atuahene, who is now the Black Stars coach. You now have Michael Essien. Derek Boateng is working for you as a scout. CK as well has worked with Right to Dream in the past. He also coached the national team. I mean, this is wonderful. At what point did you decide that, you know what, let me give a lot of these Ghanaian ex-players the opportunity to coach?
They decided to coach, and they are good coaches.
Well, you gave them the opportunity.
Yeah, but it's natural. They're good coaches.
True.
You know, and
makes it easier.
We talked about it with Henrik, the Brazilian, like his market value. It's the same thing in relation to coaches. Why are Brazilian and Argentinian coaches coming to Europe and making it, but African coaches are not. So it's just simple. They're good coaches. End of story.
Yeah.
And how other people choose to see the world is not our problem.
Yeah. Do you? Otto is now the Black Stars head coach. Do you? He worked at FC Barcelona for a year.
Longer.
Longer.
Yeah.
Longer than a year.
Yeah.
Did you?
And I offered him the head coach job in FCN as well.
At what point?
Later on.
Before he left FCN.
No, when he went back to Dortmund. Yeah.
Before the World Cup.
Yeah.
And he said no to that.
Yeah.
Too? Wow. They are. You know, Otto he's a unique figure. He's very obsessed with football. Do you remember how you got connected to him to come to FCN?
The first time I saw Otto play was African Cup of Nations 2002 in Ghana?
2000. 2000 in Ghana.
And, you know, I knew all the Ghanaian players, and so he was one of the first foreigners, you know, because he's quite German. I was like, where's this guy coming from? I think he had a Rasta, and like we didn't know him in the same way. So I remember him that far back. And then I tracked all of the, let's say, Ghanaian heritage guys as well, monitored their careers. George Boateng is a good example, Eric Addo. Even in the Danish media, we have Francis Dicko. So I track all of those Ghanaian heritage and monitor their careers, as well as all the local coaches. So Otto was always like an interesting case. And then when I was thinking about FCN, I said, who will understand the European mindset and the Ghanaian mindset? And, you know, Denmark, border to Germany, they're different, but some similarities. So he was just an obvious candidate. So it was like I didn't know him, but it was a headhunting approach to say who's the perfect profile
at this point.
And so I just called his agent, and then, you know, we met, we talked about strategy, and then we did the deal.
That's amazing, because, you know, Otto is one guy. He's getting the job, especially after the way the first stint went. When he didn't stay on as a permanent coach, the conversation was always like, why is it? You know, now you're telling me that he even turned down an FCN job, which makes me believe what he said even more, that he just wasn't ready at the time to leave Dortmund. But now he's come back, he's doing a really decent job. You've also got Michael Essen, still with the coaching staff at FCN now. I saw his title, individual player coach. What does that mean?
Well, the way that we do things at FCN is that we balance the individual needs of the player versus the needs of the team.
Okay.
So, of course, our players love to be with us, but they're thinking about other things as well.
Yeah.
So if they see that our only focus is how to win as FCN, which is how most coaches at most clubs think, and maybe like if we think you can help us at right back, we'll play you there even if it won't help your career.
Okay.
We see it another way, where okay, we have to really focus on where do you want to get to, how can we help you get there, and then at the same time, how can you help the club to progress. So that's Michael's job, is to look at the development of the individual player and
align their goals to the team's goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not aligned.
Yeah.
So help to make the decision about, okay, like we had a player, Mohamed Diomande, who's at Rangers now, and for some time we needed him to play left back.
Is it a kid we wanted to play for Ghana?
Yeah, Ghana wanted him. But in that situation, we needed him to play left back. Okay. He wants to play either 8 or 10. So how do you balance those two things? Because it's natural for a kid, if he thinks he's an 8 and he's desperate to make it, and he's like, okay, they're playing me at left back, nobody's going to see me.
Yeah.
When Diomande left, I asked him, who's the single biggest influence in your career? He said, Michael.
Wow.
So how to manage all of those periods. And, you know, sometimes Michael played right back for Chelsea, you know, a lot of things. So those experiences, he's uniquely positioned.
Yeah. And he's a very interesting character. Michael doesn't like involving himself with, he's a very quiet guy. But when it comes to, I saw an interview on the Right to Dream, I think, YouTube channel, where each of the kids was getting a turn to interview Michael.
Yeah.
And he looked like a completely different person talking to the kids than when Michael meets anybody else outside. And
he doesn't like you media guys. That's
he doesn't. That's what you're
trying to say.
He doesn't like Ghanaian media at all. I was at the World Cup in Doha, in Qatar. I watched the Argentina and Croatia semi-final with Michael. We had a lovely conversation throughout the game. After that, I asked Michael for an interview. He says, "My friend, I'm not going to do it." Tom, the future of Right to Dream without you now.
Did you say without me?
Did I say without you?
Yeah.
Without you as CEO?
Yeah.
It's not in the hands of your very good friend, Dickinson. But more importantly, Right to Dream is growing bigger. Ghana, FCN, so Denmark, Egypt. Now you're expanding to America as well. You're taking the same principles there. But beyond everything else, you're building this one in a very unique San Diego. It's got, I read somewhere, the part ownership with the Native American people. I mean, tell me all about that, that project. It looks like a huge project because it doesn't appear to me, and I've read on this, that any other MLS clubs has any module close to what you guys are building.
Yeah, it's true. You know, it was the Mansour's vision. You know, Ludwig came up with this phrase early on. He said, "Americans just get it." Like who we are, Americans just get it. The student-athlete model, and the idea that everybody has the right to dream. Yeah. You know, aligned with the original essence of the American dream. No matter where you come from, you can make it to the top. So that was his vision, because very early on, the idea was, okay, let's buy a team in England. And then once he got into the business, he's like, it's going to work better in America. So I spent 2.5 years going everywhere in America, looking at so many projects. We had a project in Baltimore that we nearly got close to, but eventually the opportunity was in San Diego for an MLS franchise, and then with the Sequan tribe and their chairman Cody, who's a visionary, and the fact that they have this amazing reservation land where we can, you know, it's their land, so we can build what we want there. He fell in love with the Right to Dream vision, actually after he met Usaini Buddha and one Ghanaian graduate called Adelaide Ama, who's one of our best graduates.
Oh, okay.
And when he met them, he said, okay, I want to have a Right to Dream in San Diego on my land. So, you know, everything in America is big money, so it's a huge investment, and the school there and the residential there is going to be something unique.
It's a Friday morning. It's now time for me to share with you my blunt thoughts. And today I'm going right into it because some things, but it's also about discussing the national issues, where we've got to, and perhaps some things we need to remedy when it comes to our misleadership, among others. But when I talk about these things, I'm not just talking about the misleaders. I'm talking about we ourselves too. You know, sometimes the bit is, if you were in that position, or I were in that position, do we trust that we would do differently? I have my own principles. I don't know about yours. And sometimes some things beat my imagination. But would we act differently? Because that's the whole point. That's how change comes about. Which is why this morning, I've titled my blunt thoughts, SNIT, Sports, Leadership and Remittances, the key issues. SNIT, Sports, Leadership and Remittances, the key issues. Now, this morning, I'm going to walk you through about 21 slides very quickly on all of these, of course, the SNIT saga, the sports ministry, leadership, and, yes, remittances. So let's go right down to it. And I'll start with the Dr. Brian Champong 4 hotels SNIT mix, right? Yesterday, I saw a video of him saying, look, if Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the North Tone legislator, can prove that his entity, Rock City, is running into losses, he will give him some outfit somewhere, some building somewhere, that there's even a hotel within that member of parliament's constituency, he will give it to him for free, among other things. And I was asking myself, Doc, I've seen him in recent days. Why don't you just put yourself out of your misery? And if he's lying, just let your details out in terms of your tax returns. Your revenue? Are you making losses? Are you incurring losses? If not, put him to shame, you know? Rather than this bit about someone, you know, having this light-hearted conversation with you, because I don't think that does justice to you and to the rest of us Ghanaians. What do you think? But anyway, the current status, May 16, 2024, Okudzeto petitioned Shraj. May 19, SNIT justified the proposed sale. And from what we hear, it is going on. It is going ahead, right? SNIT. And the same SNIT that we all contribute to, whether they are listening or not, that's up to you to judge. May 20, Shraj acknowledges receipt of the petition. Let's try the next slide. And then you would get the demands from protesters. Recently, there was that protest. Do not sell profitable state assets. And Labadi Beach Hotel, to all intents and purposes, from what we've seen, is not. In fact, it is very liquid. It is in the black. It is not in the red. So why is it part of this deal? Obtain approval from workers and Ghanaians for sales, and Labour says no. Prevent Rock City from buying profitable assets due to its lack of profitability. And stop the illegal encroachment of the Labadi Beach Hotel Fund by the Blay family. We also know, like Okudzeto Ablakwa likes to say, the only beachfront hotel in the world that doesn't own its own beachfront, right? That makes for curious reading. But just on this point, I want to stay here for a bit. If people in private business say, we want to pick up unprofitable ventures, does someone want to take up the Komenda Sugar Factory? I know someone who has conducted studies that show that even in terms of land to produce the sugarcane and all of that, the central region, among others, they don't have what it takes. If someone says, I want to take up the Komenda Sugar Factory, which has become a rust bucket, I would say, go ahead. Whether the person has political whatever or not, let the person go ahead. Because if you're able to turn it around, then it's your gain, so to speak. It'll be a good deal, sweet deal, and guess what? That will be a niche industry because we don't have that industry in Ghana. Something like that, yeah, go, take it up. But when there's a business that is already making money, and there may not necessarily be that justification to take over, then it creates all of these in the minds of people, yeah? But next slide. On that same point, avoid running down state assets to sell to politicians, and that's something we note. Sometimes politicians will run down something just so it appears useless, and then they sell it off. I don't want to mention Saklemi. Oops, I think I did. But those are some of the issues. And when you do that, it's taxpayers' money. It is national property. It is pension money in this instance. Investment. Your investment and mine. So then what happens from there? Dismiss SNIT's management and board members. Recently, of course, the 7+ year head was taken off. Yawasafu Mafo's son was put there, and some of these issues came up. I don't know whether this was in the works before Mr. Osafu Mafo took over, but read between the lines. Me, I don't know. I honestly don't know. So it's up to you. President should commit to signing a bill once forwarded banning politically exposed persons from buying state assets. I support this with 1 million bags of cement, which I cannot buy. But if I had, I would support it. Politically exposed people should be nowhere near some of these purchases. At the point where you are politically exposed, no. Maybe if in the aftermath or something, as a private businessman, you want to try it and you go through the proper channels. It's even better when your your administration is not in power and another one is in power and maybe these things are done. It creates some, whether cosmetic, positive effect. But you see, sometimes it becomes a problem. No one is impugning or denigrating Dr. Brian Echampo. You are a great minister. Your entity is in government. Your party has done things at Rock City. Some party members have already taken over the beachfront. Now, there is this whole saga. And comparatively, even Labadi Beach Hotel versus Rock City. Yes, I heard the Agric Minister talking about the numbers, that his hotels put together have about 1,000. It's not just about the numbers. It's about, there are so many factors. What is the international recognition the Labadi Beach Hotel has? Does Rock City have that? So there are so many dynamics. What is the turnover of Rock City, all your hotels put together, versus even, let's just pick Labadi Beach Hotel. So those are some of the things to look at carefully, right? So it's not to say, oh, he's this, so he can't do it. No. But I'm saying, if you look at it carefully, oh, we be na I can know. Ko broni, what's in the mind so no. Niema ibi, onye, on find a home for it. Some things you will try to, but here, you know, sometimes, and then we take it that, oh, you are persecuting me. But is it persecution? Or is it just some conflict of interest that we should know better about? Yeah? Anyway, next slide. Let's go to the next slide. You would hear Emmanuel Adumwa Bosman, Deputy Chief of Staff, when the protesters, you know, finally made it. I can assure you that the petition will be looked into and appropriate action will be taken because they meant to go to Christ the King and as far as the Jubilee House. Next slide. The question is, will that happen? But from there, I want to talk now about sports because something interesting is happening and I'm scratching my head like, okay. Sports Minister Mustafa Yusuf says, when you come after the successes, and this is the amputee team that went and won again 2 times, back to back, right? They went up north, Africa. When you come after the successes and there's anything, the first port, by the way, he says point, but the expression is port of call, where you stop, port. The first port of call is this office, Ministry of Youth and Sports. We are not going to tolerate your using the state for your personal benefit. Okay, all fair and square. Next slide. Unlike last year when you landed and you came here directly, this year you started going from one place to another without any records to the government who sponsored you, and that cannot be tolerated. Were they supposed, when the former president gave them 10,000, to come and give them to you, Mr. Sports Minister? Is that what you wanted? No, I'm just asking a question, just for some understanding. I know you can't respond from here, but maybe you are sitting in your chair watching me and throwing your responses. Maybe we should have an interview. Next slide. Now, the amputee football coach. The government sponsored us, like the minister said, by buying our flight tickets and paying for our participation fee alone. Flight tickets, participation. I know. That was the sponsorship the minister was talking about. That was all. We bought our jerseys from Kantamanto for the 2024 AFCON. Kanta was featuring. Now, I've heard things about, oh, let's go to the next slide. Oh, it wasn't the jerseys they used on D-Day when they were playing, but for training and the rest. You're just making the matter worse. Our hotel bills were taken care of by the local organizing committee of the tournament. We never received anything from our budget. The only thing we received was our participation fee. That's a whole different ballgame of $8,500. That was the entirety of it. Next slide. Before we get here, so this is what happened. The former president, and I don't really mind that it's him. It could have been anyone else. It could have been a businessman who gave them the money. We don't take care of our sports people. We want heroes and heroines. But the people who do exploits for us, twice now, back to back, our amputee team has won. Should it even be the point? There were claims that they wanted to meet the president, and there was no access. They have tried and tried after winning the gong. And so they went to the former president. Why were they impeded from meeting the president? Is it because they are amputees? When was the last time our football teams won any trophy? They went and did it. Lack of recognition. The women have been out there, Hazake's ladies, the princesses, the queens, doing great things. Even the money we owe them, we don't want to pay. And yet, Mr. Sports Minister, the first port of call should have been this place. You should have come here and done what? You couldn't even get jerseys for them. But let's talk now about leadership right before I get into remittances, and we'll end very quickly. Recently, Lord Paul Yao Boateng, member of the House of Lords in the UK, was speaking at the University of Professional Studies, Accra. He says, those great powers who have fed and continue to feed on Africa's resources with their willing collaborators have pulled Africa down in an impoverished and conflicted posture. Thanks to us, thanks to our leaders, our misleaders, I beg your pardon, our misleaders, because just a weapon so. I say, but we are still fools, and that is why we are where we are. You may not like what I'm saying, but you know in your heart of hearts is the truth. Next slide. We are held down in an impoverished and conflicted gesture by the dependence on external aid and the great powers. This is Ghana beyond aid at the IMF. As dependent as can be. Have you checked the dollar rates? Do you know in recent times how much of a percentage we've lost again? Over 3% to the dollar. You don't produce anything. You produce practically nothing. You're always importing. Your hands are tied. The least shock, economy yamutu. And so, kasa bebrebe. If it were talk, Ghana would be number one. But walking the talk, hey, asamaba. Anyway, so that is it for, let's go to the next slide. That is it for that. But it feeds into what I'm doing next. Because if you look at the trend of Ghana's grants, and that is how I'm going to end, on the remittances front, there's a picture in there. The Ministry of Finance data points to the fact that, look, grants 1.2 billion in 2020, 1.18 billion in 2021, even under COVID and the rest. 1.1 billion in 2022, and in 2023, January to June alone, was 632 million. So you can see that it will definitely fall into this category if you add July to December. Those are grants we receive. But let's look at our remittance story. Next slide. And it feeds into this because with all of these things we are getting, how about multidimensional poverty, which we've been talking of in recent times? It will shock you, for those who don't know. And I was at this event. I hosted this event, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. 7.3 million persons in Ghana are multi-dimensionally poor. Do you know what that means? If you take a population of 30.08 million in terms of the household population, do you know what that means? That means for every 4 people you pick, 1 is multidimensionally poor. Do you know what it means? You are poor on different levels. There's poverty and there's grinding poverty. Like ohia bubro, ohia fita. So some, no lack of education, no employment, no means of making money, poor access to food. Like the dynamics are many. Let's go to the next slide. If you look at the recent, and this is the Ghana Statistical Service putting this out, 43.8% of Ghanaians are multidimensionally poor, persons experiencing severe poverty. Going back to the 7.3 million. Next slide. And if you look at the contribution by indicators, you would see that, and these are some of the parameters that the Ghana Statistical Service uses. Employment, 32.60%. Living conditions, 27.9%. So employment, how many are unemployed and all of that, and how does that feed into the conversation? Living conditions, 27.9%. Health, 21.7%. Education, 17.8%. It means on these fronts, right, you can be multidimensionally poor. You are employment, hey. Health, bobo. Education, which feeds into employment. And then living conditions. So there are people who are, that's what we mean by multidimensional poverty. Poverty across different planes. And they are here with us. How are we taking care of them? What are the social nets to hold such people, keep them from falling? Is it the talk? Go by the streets everywhere. You see the street urchins everywhere begging for money. Do you know what we are creating for the future? The problems we are creating for the future? If they don't find jobs eventually when they hit their teens and their 20s, do you know what they'll end up doing, some of them? It could be you they will be attacking and taking your assets and your valuables. You know, there's always that saying I go back to. The day may come, and it's not my quote, where the poor will have nothing left to eat but the rich. So keep amassing the wealth, those in the political class. God forbid, but that day could come. The people you've deprived may come to you and take them away. Next slide. Now, if you look at the distribution of multidimensional poverty by region, it's shocking, isn't it? Also partly because of the numbers. Almost 1 million in the Ashanti region, 959,000. Northern region, 873,000 plus. Greater Accra, 627,000. Central, 623. Eastern, 611. Next slide. Are you surprised? Don't be. And if you look at the distribution by economic sector of head of household, right, you would realize that for those in agriculture, okay, 34.3% in agric. In industry, 8.9%. In services, 6.2%. Do you know why this is interesting? Agric is supposed to be one of the major contributors. Yam, in 2022, thereabouts, were the largest exporter in the world, even higher than Jamaica. We've consistently been around that. Cocoa and the rest. Agric is our backbone. Yet, if you pick heads of households, multidimensional poverty, those who are most affected, look at the percentage, the percentile in agric. So, people are doing all of this. As for the galamsey, let's not even mention it. What are they earning from it? Just say, sometimes you think about this country and you just get. But let's go to the next and final slide. This dovetails into the bit about remittances. Because you see, if we're doing the right things in this country, mind you, the year report for 2022, we're claiming we got what? 18 billion or so in remittances. Last year, it hit 50 plus billion. What happened? What happened? And that is why it is important, even as we look at, because there are discrepancies between what the World Bank has been telling us and the figures and what our government, the Bank of Ghana, has been telling us. Because look, the relative stability in the exchange market in 2023 was due to improved inflows from the first tranche of the IMF ECF, the domestic gold purchase program, remittances, and forex purchases from mining and oil companies, as well as tight monetary policy. But there's supposed to be something after this, talking about what shows. The World Bank is telling us we've got north of what? Is it $27 billion? We are saying we've got far less than that. The difference, the discrepancy is over $5 billion. Do you know what that means? That means if those sums of money had been mopped up, we would have no business going to the IMF. So when some of us talk, some may say, oh, chia bindodo, or yen say dodo. Your future, maybe you don't care about your future, that's fine. How about the young ones? Do they even have a future? I know I've spoken a lot this morning, but I really want us to think through these issues. And think. Where are we going? If we allow these political parties to play ping pong with us like this, you may be, hey, NDC, hey, MPP, it doesn't matter. In the end, you know what they say, when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Guess what? We are the grass. My name is Benjamin Akako. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. If you don't like what I said, it's your wahala. But I speak the truth. And like the motto of Commonwealth Hall, my erstwhile hall, truth stands. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. As always, I pray, may God bless Ghana and make her great and strong. A A warm welcome back on the AM show. I'm welcoming you back, but the issue we're about to discuss is not one that gives us any comfort. The Ghana AIDS Commission is concerned about low condom use and a growing HIV infection rate, as Ghana records 17,774 new infections, and this was last year, and 12,480 related deaths. That is staggering. It's worrisome. But the question is, what are the triggers and how do we stem the tide of same? We're delving into this issue this morning with our guest. He is head of the Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission, Dr. Atuahene. He joins the conversation. Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
Last time we spoke was some months ago.
Yeah.
And you had a lot to say, and today we have another conversation. There's so much to talk about. But before we get there, I want you to follow me on some of these slides, and just to paint a picture of what exactly is happening as far as this AIDS situation is concerned. If the slides are ready, we'll just get to them before we get into it. Right. So let's get into the slides now. So there you have it. HIV prevalence in Ghana. People living with HIV, 334,095. That is people living with HIV in 2023. Next slide. So we get there. The new infections in 2023 alone, 17,774 people. That is almost 20,000 added on. And those are some of the details we'd like to share with you today. And that is from the Ghana AIDS Commission. Now, if you look at the gender of new infections, of course, we must look at the male-female ratio. 6,457. That is the add-ons in 2023, the new infections. And the females, 11,317. In fact, it is almost twice the rate of male infections. And I'm going to be asking Doc about why that is. 6,457 versus 11,317. Then if you look at the age groupings, it becomes even more worrisome. Those under 15 in the new infections, 1,698. Under 15. 10 to 19 years, 1,520. And then if you look at those above 15, 16,076. There's a story there, and we'll be painting that story when we come into the studio. But again, Dr. Atuahene, who's sitting here, he says the data indicates that Ghana has not been able to achieve its annual target of a 17% reduction in new HIV infections in the last 10 years. For 10 years now, we've not been able to achieve that. And that is Dr. Treme saying it. He's in the studio with me this morning. Then again, per the AIDS Commission, there's been a 9% increment in HIV in the population between 2013 and 2023. That is almost 1/10, right? That is almost 10%. And that is not good for a country that wants to bring HIV down to the barest minimum. In terms of deaths, like I mentioned earlier, 12,480 have succumbed to HIV, and this was just in 2023, just last year alone. We're not adding other years, just last year. And that is the tale of the tape. So let's come into the studio now. Dr. Atuahene, good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Looking at these figures that you've just, we've walked through, what picture does it paint in terms of Ghana's HIV status and how well we are doing in tackling the disease?
Well, as a country, we've set ourselves certain targets which will help us measure progress towards ending AIDS by the year 2030 and achieving epidemic control. Now, these data show that we are way behind, far, far away behind.
How far behind, if you could estimate?
For example, new infections. We are supposed to reduce new infections by 17% every year. And that cumulatively would ensure that we achieve 85% reduction in new infections by the end of 2025. But over the last 10 years, that is 2013 to 2023, we are only able to achieve 14% reduction in new infections compared to 85% that we should achieve by the end of 2025. So you see the wide gap. In the same way, the AIDS deaths must also be reduced by 85% by the end of 2025. And over the same period of 10 years, we've been able to do only 20,000. So we have about 65 percentage point difference. And that means we are far, far away from our target. And that is the most concerning aspect, because we know that we have the right strategies, the right policies, we have the tools to really end AIDS within this decade. And so if we are lagging behind, it must be concerning for everybody. And we are lagging behind for 2-3 reasons.
What are they?
Number one is that Ghanaians are not taking HIV seriously. We are too complacent, and we demonstrate, utter disrespect for the prevention protocols. That's number one. Number two is stigma and discrimination. We still are having high levels of unaccepting attitudes towards persons living with HIV in the country. Ghana Statistical Service says that the recent report indicates that 78% of women and 72% of men, demonstrate unaccepting attitudes towards people living with HIV, to the extent that...
So stigmatization.
Stigmatization. Somebody will not buy food from a person living with HIV. Somebody wouldn't want his or her child to sit in the same classroom with another person or a child who is HIV positive or comes from HIV-affected household.
We've come very far, but it's also because of the miseducation. Do you remember back then there were claims about, someone has cut himself or herself and put it in some food and all of that? People don't even realize that the virus, until it's in your body, is very susceptible, and that even at a certain level of heat, which you would cook at, it would not survive and all of that. So then it tells me, before you go on to the other forms of stigma, it tells me that the education, while we've come a long way from the 80s and 90s when this started, look at Magic Johnson and his story. It also tells you that still miseducation is out there, and it is feeding the stereotypes, isn't it?
The misconceptions are, very pervasive in the country. And it is worrying that it must be so, because we've come a long way. And HIV advancement in terms of technologies and scientific advancement is way, way, way above several other diseases. And in fact, HIV management has become a model for management of many other diseases in the world. And so we shouldn't be here. But here is the case that we are having high levels of stigma that drives people living with HIV underground and prevent them from accessing prevention and treatment services. It's also, even to the extent of people living with HIV, self-stigmatizing themselves and not even disclosing their HIV positive status to even their partners.
Even their partners.
Some of them, sadly, would not even tell and educate their children who were born with HIV and are being made to take medicines every day because they have to, prevent disease progression and ensure longevity. And so if a mother will not disclose to the child that lives with HIV, and the reason why the child should continue to take his or her medicines on daily basis, it becomes worrying. Because
there are risks.
Yes,
there are risks because the child could determine at some point, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I will not do it.
Exactly.
That child starts getting exposed. And then there's the likelihood of infecting other people.
Exactly.
But just back to the point you said about the advancement of HIV, treatment, medication, and all of that. The ARTs, the antiretrovirals. I know that there are systems in place so that sometimes you can even have a woman, a mother-to-be who has it, but through treatment, the child may not be infected, right?
Yes.
All of those are there, but some people feel, once the person has HIV, nothing can be done. Here we can even have a child who is born of a mother with it, but doesn't have it. Just to corroborate what you're saying about the advancement of, technology and others
Yes.
in HIV.
So all these add up to the concerns. And it's not as if we are not giving the right information or education. Mothers, when they get pregnant, they are educated about HIV and what they need to do to ensure that their babies, if they have HIV, their babies would be born HIV-free. And we are seeing high numbers of, children under 14 being HIV positive, who are mostly, which largely occurred through mother-to-child transmission. And so we have mothers who know they have HIV, but are not taking the medication, or at some point discontinue. And so it has impact on their children in many ways, including transmission to their babies. And so we are saying that the services are available. What mothers need to do and persons living with HIV need to do is very simple: adherence to treatment. As long as they continue to adhere to treatment, there is a high chance for pregnant women not having HIV-positive children. There are thousands of children who are born to HIV-positive mothers who are HIV-free. And so if it is possible for one person, it must be possible for everyone.
Right.
But the difference is adherence. Because if a pregnant mother is virally suppressed and works so hard or adheres to treatment and maintain the suppressed status, it is highly unlikely that
it will be passed on to the child.
It will be passed on to the unborn child.
And what a great gift that would be.
Yes.
For whatever reason, because sometimes it's through no fault of the person. Maybe something was used here, there, and the person contracted it. But what a gift to give a child, not just life, but the fact that you did everything possible to prevent that child from getting HIV. But that hinges on consistency, taking the drugs at the right time, consistently, and that will bring it. But I have this question for you. There's also this statistic that has been put out that, just an aside, that there are 5 new HIV infections every day in Ghana. Is that correct?
It's rather 50.
50?
Yes.
Yes, because I just did the mathematics, and I realized that when you divide 17,774 by 366, you get around 48 point something. So it is not 5, it is 50.
It's 50.
We have 50 new infections every day in Ghana.
Yes.
Wow. I was curious about that because I saw 5, but then when I did the math, it wasn't adding up. 17,774 divided by 366. Or maybe if you do 365, then you may get about 50.
If you are doing 365, then it's approximately 50. Now, imagine the mathematics of HIV transmission. If these 17,774 people have multiple partners, which is clearly demonstrated in the Demographic and Health Survey report, that multiple sexual partnership is quite pervasive in the country. And so if 17,000, almost 18,000 people living with, who newly acquired HIV in 2023, and mind you, people who are newly infected are more infectious, you know, so there is high...
Those who are newly infected are more infectious.
More infectious.
What is the science behind that?
The science behind that is that in the acute stage, the virus multiplies, you know,
rapidly?
Much more rapidly,
wow.
You know, and so as the virus multiplies much more rapidly in the blood or the tissues, then the person has a very high chance of transmitting the virus to the sexual partner.
And likely at which stage they still don't even know they have it.
Yes, and that is when they don't know. That's when they feel strong and there is no sign of infection. And so they ignorantly transmit the virus. And so if a person has, let's say, 2 or 3 sexual partners, there is high likelihood that at least one of them may get HIV or acquire HIV during the period. And so if you do the multiplication, and their sexual partners also have sexual partners. And so it goes on and on and on.
So
and
one gives it to another, the other person gives it to another person.
Exactly.
So depending on how promiscuous that person is,
yes,
it could be disastrous.
Yes. And this is the picture we all must have in our minds, that having almost 18,000 is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a much bigger story. And so as a people, we need to realize that we have to do everything to stop the chain of transmission of HIV. Because HIV acquisition or transmission in the country is 80% through sexual contact. And so if we are having high-risk sex, which is casual sex, having sex with your non-regular partner, a non-regular partner, which means having sex with somebody who is not your spouse or whom you are cohabiting with. If you meet somebody on the streets, on the bars, at the beach, at the nightclub, football park, and you just have sex with that person, that is casual sex, and it's high risk. And the data shows that in such circumstances, they don't use condoms. And in fact, condoms during high-risk sex is on a declining trajectory since 2018.
Wait, say that again.
2008.
Condom use during what?
High-risk sex is on decline from 2008. It's been consistently on decline.
So I want a proper understanding. What you're saying is high-risk sex is what you've described. Maybe you go for an event, a football match and all of that, you meet this person, and then all of a sudden you want to get into that. But they don't use condoms.
No. Using condoms during high-risk sex is very low. They don't use both among males and females since 2008. And what that, unfortunately, high-risk sex activities is rather on the increase among the Ghanaian population.
Is that impacting our numbers?
Oh, yes. So whereas you are seeing increase in high-risk sex, you expect that such sex will be protected. But no, it is rather on decline. Protection is on decline. So the inverse relationship between high-risk sex activities and protection is a major issue for us. Besides, we have multiple sexual partnerships, and which also drives the new infections. And therefore, we all have to take responsibility for our own safety when it comes to HIV acquisition. And no one can do that for us. every individual must take responsibility. HIV is very easy to prevent, very, very easy to prevent, because you don't acquire it unconsciously. You take actions that you deliberately plan to execute.
Unless there's an error somewhere and something is introduced into your body, because it must hit your bloodstream, right?
Exactly. And so if the activities that you deliberately undertake are the ones that lead you to acquiring it, you must as well take deliberate decision to protect yourself.
Precautionary measures.
Exactly.
In other words, you're also saying, I think you've said it, but I want you to re-echo, the main means people are contracting HIV in Ghana, it's not that, oh, I went somewhere and mistakenly this and that. It is through sex, sexual intercourse.
Exactly.
What percentage would you give that?
80%.
80%?
Yes, and 15% through mother-to-child transmission. And 5%, for the other things, like you just said, needle prick or
even sometimes someone who uses certain categories of drugs.
Yes,
and you are sharing
intravenous drug users who share needles and things like that, using contaminated sharps. And so these things are very easy to prevent. You can choose not to use any sharps that have been used by another person. You see, so the point is, preventing HIV infection is one of the easiest things anybody can do. It's just the willingness to take action.
So just mentioning the percentage of those who are transmitting from mother to child, 15% component, it means you are doing something right when it comes to getting mothers to follow the course so that they don't transmit. It means in that sector, there are a lot of gains. Those engaging in risky sex without protection, they are contributing a lot to this. But the mothers, it means you have that practically under control, right?
Yes, we have it under control. First, every pregnant person who goes to the antenatal clinic is offered HIV testing, HIV tests, and they are educated about that. And every mother will want to have a healthy baby. And so they will always cooperate with the midwives and the nurses in the ANC. They take the test, they get to know their HIV status, whether negative or positive. And the nurses and midwives go further if the person has HIV to see how they can also support their families, because it is most likely the spouse or any of the children may have contracted HIV. So there is a way of counseling and helping them also to take the test for them to know their HIV status, so that they will all be supported with treatment if they have HIV, or to reduce their risk in order to prevent HIV infection if they don't have it. So that is available. And then if they have HIV, they will immediately be given antiretroviral treatment and supported to adhere to treatment, become virally suppressed so that they cannot transmit the virus to their babies. But even then, during childbirth, they are supposed to go to the clinic or hospital to deliver, so that their babies can be given medication to prevent acquisition of HIV. That is, if by mistake the virus gets into the baby, then the medication will prevent the virus from, attaching itself to the cells and then begin to turn the cells into viral manufacturing factory.
Right.
And so when that is done, the next step is to ensure that the feeding of the baby does not lead.
I was just about to get there.
Does not lead to transmission. And they give them comprehensive education and tools to enable the mothers to feed their babies properly and not transmit the virus to their babies through breast milk. So all these are available to every mother. But because of stigma and the fear of the husband or the spouse deserting her, some of them would not even disclose. And because they are afraid the spouse may find out that they are taking some medicines every day and not knowing why they should do so, they hide the medicines. And some also will not even continue taking the medicine. And this is where we get the mother.
And all this while, if they are not doing the right things, or maybe someday for fear of letting the other person, the partner, see, they don't take their medicines and all of that, they put everybody at risk, because the partner will also be at risk on the back of their failure to take these medications. Probably
the partner even got infected before the wife or the woman got infected. And so there should be no fear in this. You see, this whole business of HIV transmission, the center of that business is the people living with HIV. Because it is those who have HIV who transmit to those who do not have HIV. And so every person living with HIV must accept that, unfortunately, that is the status that they are going to live with for the rest of their lives.
But how can I make the most of the situation?
Exactly. How do you make most of the situation? Especially, how do you ensure that society does not suffer as a result of that? How do you ensure that your family does not suffer as a result of that? How do you ensure that your partner does not suffer as a result of that? And even when you are going to marry, you need to be open,
full disclosure,
and transparent, and disclose to your would-be partner. Usually they have the fear that, when they get to know, maybe they will not accept me. But it's not true. We have so many people who accepted to marry HIV-positive persons, and they are living happily and peacefully. Some of their unions are even far better than non-HIV affected, couples. And so it is just an assumption. If the person loves you and knows your value, that person would understand that HIV is now a chronic disease. You can live with it the rest of your life, and it is not going to affect your life expectancy unless you don't do the right things. And so those who live with HIV must take personal responsibility to protect their partners, their families, their communities, and the entire Ghanaian society.
And on that very point, there's something that I don't know whether not too many couples are doing them now, but you want to get married and all of that, you must check what's the genotype. It's important.
Yes.
The genotype. Does your partner have a sickling, what do you even call it? The sickling cell. There's another term. Those who are not necessarily SS, maybe AS, and they are carriers, right? How could that necessarily? And I even hear now you could be AA, but there are some proteins or something else. So you have to conduct proper tests to know what your AA really means, whether it's a full AA or you have some traits in there, so that if you were to marry someone who was AS or AC or whatever, because these are children, and the children, there are likelihoods, sometimes 50% that they may be. But all of these things are people checking before they go ahead and settle down with X person or Y person. Like I mentioned, Magic Johnson has lived, we heard, was it not in the 80s that Magic Johnson came up with HIV?
He's one of the...
And look at him, till today, if someone told you he had, you wouldn't believe it.
Yes.
But he has lived his life.
He lived for more than 30 years.
Exactly.
And even in Ghana, where HIV treatment started just about 20, 21 years ago, we have people who have lived with HIV for more than 30 years because of treatment. They are on treatment, and because they adhere to treatment, they are still alive, active, and economically productive. And so HIV is no longer
it's not a death
sentence.
It's not a death
sentence. It's a chronic disease. And the technologies have advanced. And therefore, if you are a young person, you need to understand that no matter what your health status must be, there are technologies that are coming up that can even resolve some of the, difficult health conditions like sickle cell. Stem cell technology is making massive change in healthcare. And so these technologies are increasingly becoming available for even HIV treatment. Very soon, we will, in the near future, we expect to have, some treatment that will lead to remission. And people living with HIV may not continue to take drugs every day. So these possibilities exist, but we are not there yet. That is why people living with HIV must continue to adhere to treatment on a daily basis.
And speaking of some of the advancements, you just brought to mind, I mean, now there are self-tests.
Yes.
And some of them are not even blood, right? Or
Yes.
all of there are self-tests so that also as a way of stemming the tide of stigma. You can actually purchase, I know you have these available. People can purchase these kits and test themselves in the sanctity of their own homes. So that you know it, probably no one out there has to know it. Maybe your family will get to know, but you know how to take care of yourself. Can you tell us just a little bit about these self-tests?
Yes, the self-test is non-invasive test, which means you don't have to prick yourself to draw blood to do that. You can do oral swab, with the test kit, and then get to know your status. There is step-by-step.
So oral swab, you're basically using saliva, or is it?
Yes,
or you swab your mouth.
Yes, on the
or the mucosal.
Yes, so it's the mucosal. You have to pick the mucosal. What do you call it?
Let's say mucus,
so
right?
Your
so from within your.
What actually happens is that you run it on your gums, both upper and lower gums, and then it will pick the necessary ingredients that are required for the test to be done. And you can do this on your own at home. It is intended to help, people who are underserved when it comes to testing. So that, and of course, because of stigma, individuals may be reticent in going to hospital to know their HIV status. But the self-test kits enable people to do this in their privacy, to know whether there is possibility of having it or not. But after they have done the screening, they have to talk to a healthcare professional by going to health facility for further diagnosis and management. If they test positive or if they test negative and they want to confirm, they can go to health facility to get that done.
Okay. And is this easily accessible? Do people have to reach out to the AIDS Commission before they can get it? Is it available in pharmacies? What is it?
Yes.
What's the availability?
If you can get self-test kits from many pharmacies at a cost. But if you go to the health facilities or those that are being distributed in the communities, it's for free. And HIV testing, all health facilities must be free. And so it's available.
All right. I just wanted you to make that crystal clear out there so that everyone knows. AIDS, HIV, getting to AIDS shouldn't be. We all must. I think there's a herd immunity effect on this as well, because the fewer the people getting infected and all of that, and if those who have it are taking their medication, gradually we phase it out. I just also want to say it is criminal if you have it and you knowingly are out there spreading it. It's criminal. And it's inhuman. for you to do that in the first place. But I'm curious. If you look at the new infections in 2023, I'm wondering, why is it that you're looking at 6,457 males, and yet you have almost twice the number, 11,317 females? Is it that the males are not reporting? Is it that the females are reporting more? What is going on?
What it means is that females are more vulnerable to HIV infection than males.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Females are more susceptible to HIV infection than males?
Yes.
What explains that?
Biology, number one.
Biology?
Yes. The anatomy clearly demonstrates that the female genitalia is more of the reproductive system is more of a receptacle. And so when a female has sex with a man, penile sex, and the man ejaculates, the sperm, which might contain HIV particles, may remain in her for quite some time, whereas that of the male, you hardly can see that. And secondly, the surface area of the vagina is much wider than that of the male. And thirdly, the mucous membrane of the vagina is much more fragile than that of male. And especially in Ghana, we have almost universal male circumcision. And circumcision is found to be a protective factor for HIV transmission. And so there are a number of reasons for this. And so women must be aware that they are more vulnerable, and therefore they should protect themselves.
So in all of this, women should be looking out more. Women should be even more, I mean, everybody.
Yes.
But as a woman, you should be even more particular. I have someone who also operates in the medical space sending me. Females have what they call large surface area, as the doctor is explaining. So females are even more susceptible, and they should be even more wary when it comes to this.
Yes.
And that whole bit about if it's not on, it's not in.
Yes.
If the partner is refusing to use protection, you should also refuse to give them whatever it is they're after.
Exactly. And you see, the truth of the matter is that it is much, much easier for a man to transmit the virus to a female than female giving the virus to a man. That,
on the back of the same thing you've spoken of.
That basic understanding should be common among Ghanaians and every people of the world.
So let me just say this, and correct me if I'm wrong. It means that, let's say a man contracts HIV and has sexual interactions with about 10 women. The likelihood that he could infect all 10 women is very high.
It's very high.
But a woman contracts HIV and she may have had 10 male partners. The likelihood that she would infect all 10 of them is pretty low.
Yes. And so, and so the transmission rate from woman to man is just about 2%. Whereas
2%?
Yes, whereas it is more than 12% for a man.
The transmission rate from woman to man, a woman who has HIV to a man who does not have HIV, is 2%.
Yes.
But the transmission rate in Ghana, from a man who has it to a woman who doesn't have it, is 12%.
Yes, more than 12%. And so you can understand the difference. And that is why women should not gamble with their health and their lives by just accepting that, oh, if he will give me more money to have sex without a condom, it's okay for me. It shouldn't be okay for you, especially when you might have untreated sexually transmitted disease. That can also heighten the chance of you getting HIV.
You know, this also then brings to mind, how do you work with our friends who operate at the red light district? I'm talking about, you know, those who are in the sex business.
Yeah.
You know, I hear there are times where someone would say, oh, I don't want to use protection, and maybe they pay more. That means for men who are engaging the services of such women, the likelihood of spread is right there in that group. Yeah. How are you dealing with that? Do you have any interactions with these people?
Oh, yeah, we have special program for them. And without that, we should be seeing much, much higher new infections in the country every year. But for that group, no matter our financial challenges, we give them special attention. Sex workers, men who have sex with men, now we are adding those who inject drugs, and high-risk men. And so there is special programs designed for them. We provide condoms, we test them, we link them to healthcare facilities for them to receive, you know, further diagnosis and treatment. And most of those who work in that industry, who are reached out by the service providers, actually get the opportunity to receive treatment when they are tested positive. But we must also be aware that HIV prevalence in these groups are much higher than the general population. And so if you choose to have sex with a sex worker, you need to be aware that you are better off protecting yourself.
Right.
Because if you don't do that, you have much higher chance of contracting HIV.
All right.
But one point I would like to make is the fact that I have talked about casual sex. I have also talked about multiple sexual partnerships. But unfortunately for us as a country, sex is often transactional. So you may think that some people are doing it openly in a commercial way, but the majority of the people are actually having transactional sex. That means giving out sex in exchange for something.
I've heard of cases where maybe someone's father is in a bad situation, no money for hospital, and someone says, I'll give you the money, but...
Yes. And that happens all the time.
And sometimes they end up infecting
in the workplace, almost everywhere. And that is one major driver of new infections in the country.
Now, we have just a few minutes to go. We're looking at 9% increment in the population of HIV infected between 2013 and 2023. That's a 10-year period. And last year, 12,480 deaths. Are we winning the fight against HIV? I mean, looking at the numbers. Briefly on that, because then I want to get to the bit about the project to end by 2030. I mean, bring it to its barest minimum. And then the bit about the Global Fund and medication. So quickly on the 9% and the deaths.
Well, that is the most sudden aspect of the work we are doing. Knowing that you have the program, the services that people need to end AIDS are available, the policies are in place, the tools to prevent HIV transmission are in place, including technologies. And we are lagging so behind.
In terms of the figures.
Right? Yes, on our targets. It's quite disturbing. But the point is that the major factor to that is the fact that we do not have the funds to bring these services to scale. So, for example, we have money from donors to provide treatment to only 125,000 people who live with HIV out of 334,000. So there are 209,000 people who require treatment but may not find treatment because we don't have the money to bring the medicines to cover all of them. And so this is a major problem that we are trying to resolve.
Okay. On the bit about the medications locked up at the port, I did hear that I think in April you got your contingent, but we're being told, I mean, now that we know, the Global Fund has said, until you take care of these ones and probably use them, I don't know what the bit is on that, we are not giving you any more. And this has not happened since 2002, since the program started.
Yeah.
I hear you have enough medication. The last time I spoke to, is it Mr. Otson?
Yeah.
To last you till July.
Yeah.
But if by July you don't get the next consignment, you're going to be in trouble in terms of dealing with HIV and AIDS. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct because the Ministry of Health negotiated with the Global Fund that supplies us the medicines for the 125,000 people I talked about, that they should rather use the money they were going to use to buy the medicines to rather buy the diagnostics, that is the test kits and the reagents for the labs, whilst government buys the medicines. And the government supply of the medicines are not in yet. The government procured medicines have not been delivered. So until, if they are not delivered before the end of July, we are going to experience stockout. And we expect that government consignment would have to take us through the rest of this year and beyond. And if that doesn't happen, then we are going to face a serious problem.
What would be the impact of such a stockout?
Well, what it will mean is that we will be, let me illustrate it this way.
Briefly.
You know, someone on life support plant, when you take the plant off, that person is going to die. Or somebody on oxygen, when you remove the oxygen, the person is going to die. It's exactly the same way that if you deny the person living with HIV the antiretroviral medicines, then you are asking the person to die. You are literally saying that that person must develop, will have to have disease progression and die of AIDS eventually. That's what it means.
Okay.
Or you are also saying that that person would have to have what? Resistance to the drugs he is used to. And so even if later you bring the same drugs, it may not work.
By that time, resistance has set
in.
So,
yes, so we need to be aware of the implications. And it means transmission would also increase.
So transmission and death.
And death.
Those will be the consequences.
Exactly.
Just quick answer on this, we have to go. So the goal to tame HIV/AIDS by 2030, how close or how far away are we?
We are very far.
Very far.
Because
on a scale of 1 to 10, how far away are we?
Yes, we have to diagnose 95% of people living with HIV in the country by the end of 2025. As at the end of 2023, we had done only 65%. So we have 30%.
35% to go.
Yeah, we have
65,
done 65. So
35
we have
is left.
30%. 30 percentage point to reach. That's how far we are from our target.
And this is just 2025?
Yes.
And we are in 2024?
By the end of next year, yes.
So would you say it is feasible to get there by 2025?
If we get adequate funding.
You can get there?
We can.
Doc, you are Sembonepo, you were Jumaye. But thank you for the good work you're doing for Mother Ghana, and don't get frustrated. We will also support you in the best of ways.
Thank you very much.
We're grateful. That is the Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission, Dr. Atuahene, spearheading this effort. And of course, we must all support the effort. Don't you forget, like back then, we had the ABC of all of this. Abstinence, if you will not abstain, be faithful. And if you will not be faithful either, well, condom use is recommended. The ABC of all of this. But for the first time, the Dubai Property Expo is here in Ghana by HJ Real Estates, located at the 28 Joseph Broz Tito Avenue, Cantonment, Accra, opposite the Diamond City. That is opposite the Diamond City Apartments. Now, the HJ Real Estates, your property advisor, presents exciting opportunities of investment in Dubai. Why you should invest in Dubai: a tax-free income, good rental income, guaranteed high returns on investment, flexible payment plan for high capital appreciation, 0% property tax, tourist destinations, and it's the safest country in the world to date. So the expo date is the 21st and 22nd of June 2024. Time 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day. So make your bookings now. Reach out to them on 0537 586 262. The WhatsApp line 0537, I repeat, 586 262. And the website www.hjrealestates.com. HJ Real Estates is one word, .com. On Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, just key in HJ Real Estates. HJ Real Estates, your trusted partner. Well, stick and stay with us. There's a lot more we have coming your way as we talk about air quality and more. The air you are inhaling, are you paying attention to it? We'll be back with more on the AM Show.
Welcome back on the AM Show. Let's now talk about the quality of air that we are breathing, or air pollution, which has been established to be the second largest risk factor of death and accounting for the death of some 700,000 children in the country. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of the conversation, there's a story that you need to watch. With 2,772,157 non-communicable disease cases since 2020, asthma ranks third, trailing only hypertension and diabetes mellitus in Ghana. Even more concerning, 36,780 new asthma cases emerged from January to June 2023. For these sensitive individuals, worsening air quality due to vehicle emissions compounds their struggles. In this report on air pollution's impact, we follow Ruben, an asthma sufferer for 17 years, illustrating the grave consequences of deteriorating air quality. And when we come back, we get into the conversations. Here's the report.
In Accra, the familiar sight of cars trapped in a gridlock is an everyday occurrence. However, an unsettling reality accompanies this urban tableau. A cloud of thick plumes of toxic fumes emanates from many of these vehicles. These harmful emissions infiltrate the lungs of millions, regardless of age, with lethal consequences that unfold over time. These vehicular emissions are a cocktail of exhaust gases such as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, and particulates, sometimes too small for the eye to see. For many residents, particularly those with heightened sensitivity, this smog is gradually transforming from annoyance into a genuine menace and silently causing harm, with thousands paying the price for every breath they take. Ruben Alexander Otu knows this all too well.
It's not easy. It's a difficult moment, especially something you can't breathe as you do so often. It's challenging breathing, especially at night when you are asleep.
Ruben, like many Ghanaians, had to board commercial public transport to their destination. From Gawe to Kolebu, Ruben boards two separate vehicles.
You encounter different kind of cars with their smoke from their exhaust pipes, very bad, and they are not the best.
The journey is far from comfortable, and with the emission of poisonous gas from the carbon-fueled engines, not even his nose mask can save him.
Protect myself from the dust in the system, the dust in the weather conditions in around here. It would help me to at least have a clean breath of air. So that's why I normally put on my nose mask. And especially when I use the tro and stuff, people might come in with all sort of perfumes, in which might not be that best for me. I was in a private vehicle with a colleague, and there was a tro nearby, in which they were really polluting the air with smoke. So I pleaded with my colleague to roll his glasses and on the AC so that it wouldn't be having so much effect on me. Yes, so I do experience that a lot.
Asthma is a global concern, with the World Health Organization reporting 262 million cases and 455,000 deaths in 2019. In Ghana, the impact of asthma on non-communicable diseases is striking. Since 2020, there have been 2,772,157 cases of non-communicable diseases across the country, with asthma responsible for 239,036 cases, ranking third after hypertension and diabetes. In 2021, 84,700 new asthma cases were reported, followed by 79,355 in 2022. Even more alarming, from January to June 2023 alone, 36,780 new asthma cases have emerged.
I use my inhaler almost every day. I have two different kinds of inhalers that I use. I use the Ventolin. The Ventolin when my situation is becoming a bit severe, that's when I use. But my Serotype, I take it every day. Every day I use it just to clear my chest.
People with asthma have to resort to their medication every day, and these medications don't come cheap.
It's quite expensive to be getting those drugs almost every time. It's until I joined the university, I used to buy myself, and you have no option than to buy because you needed it daily. It affects your budget.
For Ruben, nobody cares, not even the policy makers. This time, he wants something to be done about the degrading quality of air.
Regulations are not being put in place to ensure that people like myself are well protected. So you have to ensure that you give yourself the full protection as much as you can to be on the safer side. Yeah.
The challenge of air pollution is exacerbated by the scarcity of monitoring infrastructure in many areas. Even with the limited number of monitoring stations scattered across the country, the data paints a disturbing picture of deteriorating air quality. For those particularly sensitive to these changes, the air has become an unwelcome adversary rather than a source of life. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
So there you have it, some effects of this deteriorating air quality that we're breathing. And it's not just a Ghana case, it's global. But here's some interesting facts that I want to bring to your attention before we get into the conversation. Of course, we just established that air quality is now the second largest risk factor of death globally, according to the State of Global Air Report 2024. A report was put together by Health Effects Institute and Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. Now, the report indicates that air pollution is linked to more deaths, that is 8.1 million more deaths than tobacco use worldwide. It also reveals that air pollution is responsible for death of approximately 700,000 children under the age of 5. Now, these statistics mean that around 1,917 children die every single day due to the devastating effects of air pollution. The report also highlights that Africa is significantly affected, with many regions experiencing some of the highest levels of air pollution. What does this mean? And in the Ghanaian context, how do we move forward in this? Two distinguished men are joining me this morning to get into the conversation. Dr. Reginald Kwansa, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Biology, Environment and Occupational Health at the University of Ghana, and he leads a Clean Air Fund project. He's in the studio with me. Dr. Reginald Kwansa, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Also joining us on Zoom is Desmond Appiah, who is country lead for Clean Air Fund. Desmond, if you can hear me, unmute. Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for the invite.
Great. So I had a chance to go through the report, the State of Global Air Report 2024. And one thing that, really caught my attention is that the United Nations General Assembly has formally declared access to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is now a universal human right, especially for children. But does this right goes unfulfilled for billions of people? That's the situation that we find ourselves in. And at the end of this conversation, we are hoping that we would have explored the Ghanaian context of this air pollution, find out ways that we can move forward, and also talk or focus more on the Clean Air Fund, the work that you are doing there. So to start off the conversation, can you elaborate on what this means for Ghana, considering our local context? And I'm referring to air pollution being the second largest risk factor for death, Doc.
Thank you very much. Ghana is not doing very bad in terms of managing our air, if you compare to other West African countries. However, we know that air pollution levels are consistently moving up. We know the EPA is quite putting in some efforts, but there are several factors that account for this. I think one of the things that is very obvious is emissions from vehicles. And those boils down to our policies on regulating emissions from vehicles. Another thing we can also quickly comes to mind is residential garbage burning. We have some policies on that. If you go to the districts have been mandated to manage emissions from garbage burning. But again, it's something we do on a daily basis. Then the dust from our roads, dust from the harmattan, and then also, more importantly, household air pollution. So those activities are done indoors, but the smoke wouldn't stay indoors, it eventually comes out. So there are several issues that account for the consistent increase in air pollution in Ghana.
Okay, let me come to Desmond Appiah now. Desmond, you are country lead for Clean Air Fund, and this, statistics is alarming. What do you make of it in the Ghanaian context?
Thank you again, and good morning, Doc, and good morning to the viewers. The statistics are stark. The last report that was released on the state of global air quality showed that there were a little over 7 million deaths from air pollution-related diseases. Now, this new report is saying over 8 million. So it gives us a sense that it's already jumped up. Again, the report highlights that a large number of these deaths are occurring in Southeast Asia and Africa. And so for us, and Ghana is in Africa, and so we have to be quite concerned about it. Then you mentioned again about the children aspects and the UN resolution, which is making access to clean air as a fundamental right. All these things are concerning because there should be concrete actions on ground to indicate that we are bent on ensuring that our people have clean air. The difficulty, however, is that there is not enough information to help us establish clearly the status. We have some monitoring that has been happening by EPA in Accra for over 20 years, but the rest of the country do not have that kind of infrastructure to support. We also have some monitoring that has been supported by the US State Department, the World Bank, and also the Clean Air Fund. But all these are mainly located in Accra, and we are trying to now work with the EPA to look at other parts of the country. So the data is extremely important because it helps us to establish the status quo and not to be making anecdotal decisions. In the Ghana situation, we have some laws, but there's a lot more that we need to be doing to be able to push the needle. The challenge, large challenge that the clean air field faces is that the quality of the air is not seen. So we call it like a silent killer. We are in a room, we are breathing air, but we may not see that this is the state of the quality. And there is a huge disparity. More people are vulnerable when you look at our communities. And this is even more stuck in Ghana, where you have areas where there are rich people, good tree line areas, but the vulnerable seem to be living more closely to the key sources.
Right.
Doc mentioned some of these sources, but industry is also one. And you go to some areas, you will see that there are shanty towns around there, and people are more exposed. The kind of fuels that they are using, and it's making them more exposed. So then the health systems to support even when there are issues. The short documentary that you showed, the person in there mentioned that the cost to them is so high. So you can imagine people who are more vulnerable, maybe lower level economically in the society, being exposed to more pollution. So the disease burden is even higher for those people. Yet the economic impact on them, it's greater. So the level of the informality that we have also plays a part, and we need to be looking at all this in the Ghanaian context.
Both of you have mentioned emissions and policies, government policies to ensure that we are at least tackling this from the roots. And we know that there's a ban on import of old vehicles. There's also that emissions levy that's trying to discourage the import of old vehicles so that at least we reduce the transmission in the air. So my question to you, first to Doug, is how effective do you believe the current government policies are in mitigating air pollution? And what additional steps should we be looking at?
Yeah, thank you very much. Fortunately, we had some support from Clean Air Fund to look into some of the barriers to implementation of the policies and the regulations. I think there are a lot of areas that were touched on. I think education is something that is lacking. Most people in the country are not even aware of the effects of air pollution and even the existence of certain policies. There are also areas of technology. I think there are institutions that have been mandated, as Mr. Appiah said, to monitor. We need data to make decisions. And EPA started with quite a number of reference grade monitors. Now they can talk about 5 or less. And now we see...
Is that enough?
It's not enough. And now we see, by the help of USA Department, State Department, and also Clean Air, and influx of low-cost sensors into the country, which is, of course, supporting, because reference grade monitors are very expensive. And so these low-cost sensors are very supportive in establishing that, supporting, helping us to get enough data to make decisions. Again, there are other issues that were touched on, such as funding. One thing that Mr. Appiah highlighted on is the fact that we don't see air pollution. It's a secret killer. It affects everybody, rich and poor, name them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think there should be, there's lack of collaboration among and between institutions. In Ghana and like most African countries, everything is left at the doorstep of the government, where because it's a thing that affects everybody, I think institutions, companies can come into support, where there's a need to get some monitors to do monitoring. I think some institutions can come in to support. In terms of policies, there are quite a number of policies, but we realize that its implementation is what is lacking. And probably we'll talk a bit about it later, what are the barriers to the implementation of these policies. We have quite...
We can touch briefly on it. So let's take, for example, the emissions levy. What are the barriers when it comes to implementation of this policy?
Yes, emissions, yes, when it comes to the emissions levy, though most countries are implementing something similar to this, But the fact is that are we actually putting levies on people who are causing the pollution, the most who are contributing a lot to the emissions? And how are these people contributing to the levy? I don't know the mechanism that goes into it, but I think it's very useful. But the implementation, if it's being implemented well, we can get some money to support other areas that we can help to minimize, improve the air quality. So, for example, if you have vehicles emitting, old vehicles on our road emitting a lot of pollutants, how do you tax them, for example? And most of the emissions on our roads are from very old vehicles. Although we have some policies on banning of old vehicles, but they still get into the country. What is happening at our ports? And so if emission levies could be effective if we tackle it from different angles. Okay. If we allow old vehicles to come in, and if we also fail to equip the centers, emission centers, because most emission centers, my understanding is that they don't do the emission testing. So what they do is that they look at certain things that will help cars pass on, and they come to the road. And so I think
just like our roadworthy system, you know, you just pay something small and then you slap a ticket on your car and then you're good to go.
So I think if we want to consider the emission, the levy, we need to look at the broader scope of things. Okay. Then one of the things we could do is to equip the centers so cars that are prone to emit more pollutants don't get onto our roads. Probably we don't allow old rickety vehicles, which have a short lifespan on our road, to be on our road. Yeah, so I think we need to look at it holistically.
Okay. Let me come back to Desmond up here. Desmond, so Doc is saying data gathering. These are some of our challenges, education, and then funding. Do you agree with all these? And where are the gaps that you have also identified as country lead in the implementation of these policies?
Yeah, thank you very much. And Doc is really spot on. I think I would add a bit more to what he said. If you look at the issue of the emissions levy, for instance, if you want to use emissions levy as a tool to reduce pollution, the way you target it is different. What I think we were trying to introduce in Ghana, in my humble opinion, and this is my personal opinion, I thought was more of a revenue generation tool than an emissions reduction tool, mainly because Ghana operates a polluter pays system. That is why when you generate the waste, you pay for the collection. When you have a vehicle and it's polluting more, you're supposed to be paying more. And so it becomes an incentive scheme for people to reduce their emissions from vehicles. If you go to countries like India, they have similar policies, but on the vehicle age and what vehicles can be used, how many years the vehicles should last are there. We in Ghana have similar policies, and we need to be able to implement them. And I think Doc will talk about the projects that we are supporting them to look at the barriers, why some of these things are difficult. But we have a polluter pay system, and we need to build awareness. Anywhere in the world where you are introducing what people may see as a difficult tax, you need to build the awareness and consensus before you bring it in. In the case of the emissions levy, I'm not so sure that happened in our system. And that is why maybe the pushback was so high that it became a political issue. We need to build the awareness, gather the data, show that the pollution is causing maybe X factors, X number of deaths, the impact on individuals. World Bank has reported Ghana's economy loses over $2.5 billion, $2.5 billion a year to air pollution or air pollution related issues. So that is a solid case. Where does that money
go?
Well, it's part of, like the report you said, the number of people who are sick, do not go to work, have to rely on other structures for support, the disease burden that is going up, there are some constituencies or districts we are working with in Ghana. And in the past 5 years, their data is showing that the top 3 causes of diseases in or hospital attendance in their districts are related to air pollution. Now, the economic cost to all these things, to the state, and Clean Air Fund has a report called From Pollution to Solution, which looked at Accra and its impact. Even investors' decision-making these days are based on environmental factors as well. So we go around trying to get foreign investors to come and invest in our country. They are looking at the factors that they should be concerned about. If we are high up the pollution chain, it affects their decision making because nobody is going to come and put their stuff into an environment where pollution is so high. Okay. If we look at other sources like the e-waste, there is a whole program that is supported by the EU to make e-waste recovery into what we call sound recovery. We should look at that. So the key challenge is that there are projects, programs in Ghana existing already that we need to check their impact, their effectiveness, and see what things we can do to tweak it to make it work better.
All right.
I would touch again on the vehicle age that you mentioned. Ghana has standards of emission for vehicles. EPA, Ghana Standards Authority, DVLA have worked on this, but it is not mandatory. The emissions aspect from vehicle testing is not mandatory. And so how do we work together with all the stakeholders to get to a point where it is mandatory? So you take your vehicle, they check it, they take the information, but it becomes mandatory. And these are areas that we want to be looking at. I'll just mention without explaining 3 key things that we need to also be paying attention to. There's a new bill by the EPA, Ministry of MESTI in Parliament that has been there for a long time. And that bill has aspects which would tackle or bring to the fore some of the air quality related issues. I think it's been there a while. We're really praying that it passes so that we can work with local authorities. And in that bill, localizing the action, which is one of the key concerns, localizing action is very important. And capacitating the local assemblies, because that's where the rubber hits the road. Then again, waste management is a major source of pollution in our country, as Doc referenced, major source of air pollution. And that is an area, we have a whole ministry to look at waste management. And so it is not possible to say there are no policy interventions, but we need to make sure it works. Right. How are we tackling, giving effect to these policies to make it work? We even have a tax on waste. And so if it comes to issues of the funding and the like, it is a retweaking of the structures to be able to address, capacitate the institutions that have those responsibilities so that they can get it going. And then all the things that we are doing is an add-on, which is building the awareness, building demand so that there can be accountability. So these are some of the basic things that we have to be looking at.
From what we've discussed so far, the problem is in 2 folds: human activities, burning, emissions, and all that. And then the structures in place, lack of education, funding, policies that actually work. So let's talk a little bit about the work you do at Clean Air Fund and how, since we are the ones causing the problem, I should throw that question back to Desmond. And how are you including citizens or communities in ensuring that our actions are at least, mitigating the effect of air pollution on our lives?
Thank you very much for this question. This is extremely important. In fact, the fundamental work that Clean Air Fund did before starting in Ghana showed that there was no demand for clean air in Ghana. Even reportage on air pollution related issues was very scant. And there's a doctor at the University of Ghana who has done extensive work looking at the reporting on air pollution related issues in the country. Clean Air Fund, because we are very equity focused, and that's why mentioning about the vulnerable in our societies, the communities that are vulnerable, women, children, they feature very high in the design of the projects that we are working on. And so we are very conscious of that. We are also working on a number of projects helping to address this data gap, which we've mentioned earlier. EPA has been doing great in that based on the constraints that they find themselves in, and our work together with other partners, is to augment what they are doing. And we are very glad that they've been a great supporter in the work that we've been doing. We're already working with some districts, select districts in Accra, to be able to help them translate the air quality management plan that EPA has into local action plans, local air quality action plans. So that means bringing the issue straight into the jurisdiction. So let's use, if I use AMA as an example, AMA's sources of pollution, air pollution, may be a little different from maybe Adenta or East Legon. So we want to situate the actions that AMA should be taking within their context. And that is what that project is seeking to do. And we should mention here the support that we are receiving from these select assemblies on that. I've mentioned also about waste. Waste, we have a project which is currently running with a Green Africa Youth Organization. They have run a pilot project in the Ladma district where they were taking out plastics and organics, and we are trying to scale it up. It's a good idea. We think we should scale to 5 other districts to be able to do this. The way Clean Air Fund is set up and works is that we work with partners. We co-create the initiatives and work with partners. Right. We don't do direct delivery, but we work with partners to be able to get the results that we're looking for. Okay. We've had about 8 projects that are virtually running their cycle. We have another 6 that are ongoing, and we have a couple more projects that are also going to roll out this year. One of them being the Breathe Cities project that Accra has been, is a part of the cohort, and the mayors have made commitment and other chief executives, and we are working on that. Its pillars include awareness creation. One of them, a key pillar, is awareness creation, capacity development, technical support, and also data. And so, and the Breathe is a vehicle that we are working with to ensure that there's delivery in these cities with a target to help reduce by 30% the waste burning, open waste burning that we see in Accra. And so that's a very specific target, and also to reduce pollution by 10% from vehicle. And there are specific initiatives that we want to roll out. And then we are working across the country, including the projects that Doc is leading and other projects which are ongoing. Okay, so these are projects to help mitigate the deteriorating quality of air we breathe. I mean, hopefully it will be lesser than PM or particle matter 2.5, which I hear is the standard, right? So in the interim, I mean, while these projects are going on, how can we individuals protect ourselves from these emissions, I mean, from the pollutants that we're breathing in on a daily basis, Dr. Kwanzaa?
Yes, I think these pollutants are being created by us, right? If it comes to garbage burning, it's being practiced by people. And so if you can minimize, and it doesn't happen in isolation. If you don't have any company coming to collect your waste, what do? You can't allow the waste to pile up. So you need a support from the system. So the system, there should be a creation of a system that at least once you create the waste is disposed of. So and that's a challenge. People pile up their waste, and then they have to make sure they get rid of them. So yes, we should minimize those practices. And also, for example, one of the key things, if you look at the Health Effect Institute reports, I think the chunk of the burden is attributed to household air pollution. Again, individuals can play their role. But you can minimize the use of biomass fuel. But what you can do at your own level is you can minimize self-exposure. At least if you are cooking in the kitchen, don't stay there for a long time. If you are pregnant women around, keep them away, keep the children away.
You say if you're cooking, don't stay in the kitchen for a long time?
For a long time. You put
Why is that so?
You put the pot on the stove or on the tripod, the stove. Just stay away from the kitchen. Wait for some time. You know when the food will be cooked. So the time that the food is cooking, don't be in the kitchen. Just stay away. Those are the things you can do to.
Does that apply to all forms of burning gas? Are you talking about LPG?
I'm talking biomass. Yes. Biomass. Those are the key things we are talking about. So we can minimize our exposure to household air pollution by staying away from the kitchen when at least making sure our children don't go there.
Right.
But again, we can't help it. If you don't have money to buy LPG, you can't help it than to use a biomass fuel. But at least you can, at your own level, you can do certain things to make sure exposure is minimized. Okay. And also, for example, if you have kids who walk along the road to school, you can identify a less polluted streets and then walk your children. You try to walk them to school using that road for some time. Then you advise them to use that road. So there are certain practical measures we can use to minimize exposure to some of these pollutants. At the individual level, yes, so it may help. But if we don't, I think as Mr. Appiah said, it's education. Most people are not aware that the smoke that they are that is coming, or the smoke that they are walking into, may affect their health. So education is key.
Should we be wearing masks?
Yes, mask is very important. Mask is sometimes very uncomfortable anyway. If it's very humid, it's very hot, it's very uncomfortable wearing mask. But at least there are certain things you can also do in addition to wearing masks.
Okay. David, you have, Desmond Appiah, sorry, you have the final words. And then you can tell me about your plans for the next 5 years. I'm talking about the Clean Fund project.
All right, thank you very much. And I think, as Doc has mentioned, there are lots that we can be doing. We can also continue like Joy News and all your channels are doing to continue to bring this issue to the fore. We need to be asking our policymakers to be telling us their solutions. You know, to deal with air quality related issues, it should be seen as a development issue. And the propositions that we are hearing, we should be asking the policymakers, how do you intend to improve transportation but not increase air pollution? We need to hear those solutions. We are a solutions-oriented organization, and we want to be pushing that angle. And we are glad that media partners like yourselves, the researchers, and other CSOs are also supporting in this direction.
Right.
In the next 5 years, Clean Air Fund will continue to advocate for clean air for all. And as I mentioned earlier, equity is very important. We are very glad with the UN resolution, and we are working with various stakeholders, from government to local government, CSOs, academia. We want to be able to put the research and the evidence in the hands of the policymakers so they will make informed decisions which can go to address, mitigate the sources of the pollution. And we want to be able to build capacity of our citizens to be able to demand for clean air, because ultimately that is what we should be asking for.
All right. Desmond Appiah is country lead for Clean Air Fund. Thank you so much. And in the studio with me is Dr. Reginald Kwansa, senior lecturer at the Department of Biology, Environment and Occupational Health at the University of Ghana, and leading a Clean Air Fund project. And that's how we're wrapping up for this belt of conversation. But a dedication here. Happy birthday to Marvin Bento Frimpong, a.k.a. Papa Kwesi, from Doorbell International School, Somanya. This is coming from your mom, who's a midwife, Helena Kitete of Nabita Hospital in Tema Community 4. Happy birthday to you. We'll take a break now, and we'll come back and then wrap up. Stay with us.
Welcome back on the AM show, and we're wrapping up. Sweetie Abochi is right here with me. Sweetie?
Yes, so under the distinguished patronage of Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Tokono, that's the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, the UPSA Law School proudly presents a 2024 Lifetime Achievement in Law Award and Honorific Lecture. The event presents a rare but high-level opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the outstanding and exemplary contributions of notable Ghanaian personalities in the areas of rule of law, governance, and the legal academy. This year's Lifetime Achievement in Law Award will be conferred on Nana Dr. SKB Asante, that's Paramount Chief of Asante Asokori and former Director of the United Nations Center on Transnational Corporations and chairman of the Committee of Experts which drafted the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, an august ceremony befitting the aura of the occasion. The event comes up on Thursday, 25th of July 2024 at 5 p.m. at Atuahene Kunedu Auditorium at the UPSA. So please visit the social media platforms of UPSA Law School or call 024-534-7946 for more information. And that's how we're wrapping up on the AM show this morning. I'm Sweetie Abochi, and I did this with
Benjamin Akakpo. Do stay with us. Connect with us on Monday. But up next, Joy News Desk.